it's a plot to drop the IQ. Fighting amongst each other over rumors that don't like you. Prefer us trapped in melancholy with the wood ones of holly. Suggestions that obliterate to camouflage the folly. Attempted mental robbery, executed sloppily. The poppers see this mockery and walk the talk with me. Put the hands up to touch the Akasha, cause you know deep down there's something bigger than your wallet.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Hopefully you can hear me right now, because I have no idea. But anyway, all throughout history and all over the world, we see references to a mysterious black goo. It is weirdly pervasive, and its presence has not slowed down. In fact, you'd almost think there was a secret memo to all of pop culture that they must find a way to incorporate the substance into their narratives because it is everywhere. Even the Nazis are connected to the black goo, so you know it's serious. And we are here on Rogue Ways tonight to shed light on this dark substance. But first, before we get started, let me remind everyone that you can find my memoir, my fictional novel, my poetry, my articles, my photography, and even an offering of tarot readings and life guidance on my site at www.rogueways.org. And you're also welcome to come check out the Eyes Open group on Facebook or MeWe. Our community would love to connect with you there. But now I want to introduce our stunning and brave panelists tonight. It's a star-studded crew. First, we have the originator of the badassery, Derek Murphy. Derek is the fastest supermarket stalker in the East, a baller, an herbaceous connoisseur, and the connector of all of the details in every realm of conspiracy and the paranormal. Derek is the Night Stalker and the mind behind the grand unified conspiracy theory of portaled fame. Derek, welcome back to Rogue Ways.
What's going on, everybody? It's amazing to be here. I hope that I don't mess this up because we're having a little technical difficulties on my end. So if anything goes wrong, I'm completely to blame. Take responsibility. And I'm sorry, but I'm really excited for everything we're going to talk about tonight. Really pumped.
I don't know that you're completely to blame because I don't even honestly know if people can hear us yet right now. So well, I'm going to switch over to YouTube and try to see if I can figure that out.
I can hear you guys fine, but it's a little choppy from my end, but we're good to go.
We'll see you every once in a while, at least. And next we have the OG of it all, Claude Furry, here with us once again. Claude is the research master, the synchronistic guru, the ultimate connector of the conspiracy corkboard elements, and the one who talks the most nonsense in the best ways. Claude, welcome back to Rogue Ways.
Thanks so much for having me back. It's fantastic.
And finally, the holder of all that is sacred, the man Jeff, is also back with us tonight to round out our star-studded crew. Jeff is a musical artist known as Darkside and a man of deep thought. Jeff will blow your mind quietly and with more humility than most can muster before he slips back into the magical realm from whence he came. Jeff, welcome back to Rogue Ways.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Excellent. So as always, we like to start with the pointless question of the episode. And this one, I was going to ask you guys if you're going to be dropped into a pit of goo, what kind of goo would you be dropped into, and why?
I've always had the idea that they should sell Cadbury egg cream as like jars of fluff because like I really like Cadbury eggs, but it's seasonal and like I'm not a huge fan of the chocolate they use. So like drop me into a big thing of Cadbury egg cream, or maybe like fluff might be good. Something sweet. I don't know.
I like it. You can eat.
Yeah.
Eat while you're hanging out in some nasty goo.
Yeah.
I know everyone's thinking of really dirty things right now, so you guys have to clear our minds for us.
Jeez.
I was just trying to think of what that sci-fi series was where it had these like vats and the people would lay down in it and it would be like this regenerative bath thing and they would get up and be instantly like 10 years younger.
Oh, I can picture that. I can't think of what it is.
I remember what that show was called. Anyway, I would choose that and just perpetual youth and good health. Then I just have to worry about money and I'm good.
It's kind of like Batman too, the Lazarus pit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's more like a liquid, like a water, but I can visualize like this like shaved head, bald creature like emerging from like this clear gel. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and I can't.
Yeah, I can't think of what it is. Yeah, me either.
Yeah, I like the Lazarus pit though because they did that trope on Arrow on the series also.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's you know what it is? It's that wax from the movie with Angelina Jolie and what's his name?
Wanted.
Wanted, yes.
Oh,
they were
Wanted.
down to wax.
Yeah. I saw that in theaters, actually. Yeah.
We got there to the end.
All right, Jeff, what are you going to go with?
Probably just to go with some like extra virgin olive oil because it's good for your skin. And, oh well.
Nice.
At least it won't infect my brain or something, you know.
Yes. Yeah, I have a really, really hard time because everything I went with in my head was all not actually goo. It was just a liquid. So
Right,
I don't know. I like the olive oil. Like that's a really good because that is really good for your skin, and then you're going to be like Zeus-like or something. So, but I don't want to just copy you.
Don't go out in the
So
sun. It'll be like that Seinfeld episode
what was that?
where he's putting the Crisco on his skin, Kramer, and he goes out.
Yeah.
And it takes himself.
Yes. But if I have to like be in a vat of it and like swim around for a while, I don't know, whatever the opposite of black goo is. I'm just gonna go with white goo and tell you all to stop being dirty.
Honestly, if we were all like 15 years younger, we would probably say like slime. Like if you go to any store right now, slime is having a moment right now. It's everywhere. You can buy like every variety of slime. A Play-Doh just came out with like this past week came out with like 12 different varieties of slime for Christmas. Because kids are just playing with slime, and all it is just you take it out of a little Play-Doh container, and that's exactly what it is. Right. Did you ever see? It's crazy. Did you ever see the Power Rangers movie back in the mid '90s with like Ivan Ooze? The whole plot of the movie is like I credit it as my favorite movie of all time because I was like 5 when it came out, so it hit me right in the sweet spot. But the main bad guy is this ancient primordial deity that was like trapped in the earth, and then he escapes. And he has to like create these titans to like destroy the earth. But in the meantime, like in order to get the workforce, he like becomes like a clown, and he like sells or he like gives away this free slime or Ivan's ooze to all the kids of Angel Grove, and then it affects their parents, and their parents work for him. It's like it's an infecting goo that takes over the mind of these people. And this is like my favorite, one of the first movies I remember watching in my life.
Wait, did it have something to do with?
And that's slime and
Sorry, but did it have something to do with like whipped cream or something? That's just totally not familiar to anyone. Because there's some similar movie I watched as a kid that was really weird. That I think it was an episode of Tales from the Crypt or something. Actually, I don't really know.
It sounds like
I just think of, and I didn't think about this until just now because of Power Rangers, but the Secret of the Ooze from the Ninja Turtles, right?
I don't remember.
No, it's the green ooze that transformed the turtles into these ninjas.
Oh, yeah.
What would they call it? Mutagen? Something like that? Yeah.
So ooze has always been in our like cultural mindset of this like something that can transform you into something else or something. Oh no.
Did we lose him?
I don't know, Derek. I think we could tell that you were saying something, but we couldn't actually hear what it was. No. We want to know what you're saying, but we can't hear you. But, okay, we're going to go into the first question anyway, which was, what is your guys' basic understanding of what is black goo at the most basic level? Like, how could you describe it to people who are watching this and have no idea what we're talking about?
I think you would have to go with the high level, not get into any conspiracy or any history, and just say it's a goo with special powers that's extremely rare and might or might not exist and might or might not kill you.
Yeah, that was a very good basic rundown.
Yeah, pretty much. Too. I would just
and then hope that they ask to know more.
Yeah. What are you going to add, Jeff?
I was going to say I would just add that it's kind of like a programmable proto-matter, you know?
Yeah.
Or basic building blocks of something. I don't know. Life, maybe. Alien life, maybe. Who knows?
Some kind of consciousness, maybe.
Entirely possible.
Excellent.
Well, let's follow that thread about the being a proto-matter that's programmable, because that's a pretty deep hole considering the stuff that's going on in mainstream science right now with superfluids and smart fluid, they call it smart water, and they're talking about having liquid microprocessors soon.
Yuck.
So
I'm just inherently opposed for no reason.
It's like no good.
Considering again that this has been around for as long as it has, you know, we could get into some pretty ancient history with the whole black goo thing. The idea of this has been around for centuries, and now we actually are designing such stuff. So it makes me wonder if the designer that we're creating, like there would be natural black goo, and then we're making designer black goo.
That is really interesting. That the concept has been around for a long time, but now we're catching up. But that's kind of a common occurrence, it seems like, where like media or pop culture or whatever will promote something, or not promote it, but, you know, have this sort of trope that goes over and over and over again, and then we see it in reality almost.
Yeah, it shows up. You know, you could take that in a lot of occult angles, you know, the predictive programming and stuff like that, and or using consciousness of the world's population to create the future. But it's fascinating either way that it does show up all throughout, you know, our history and all these different stories and other things that we'll talk about. And then, you know, soon all of our technology is moving that way.
So we've got the programmable sort of building block idea, the idea that possibly it's this like form of consciousness in itself. It's almost like a form of consciousness made manifest or something, or it could be even both of those things at once. And Derek seems like he's back, and so maybe he wants to add something or tell us what he was trying to say when we couldn't hear him.
I'm sorry. I'm having a little better internet now. It's like rudimentary video, so hopefully it'll get better as we go along. But was the question, what do I think black goo is, basically?
Basically, yeah.
We talked about this like a few months ago. We had like another discussion about black goo, and I thought I knew a lot about it, and now like the more I like see references to it, and the more I see it in different forms of media, and like the more I like listen to different podcasts from different researchers about it, so like the less I have a grasp on what it actually is.
Yeah.
Like,
that's like the mark of any good researcher, though, is you have more questions than you have answers as you go along, right?
Yeah. Like I feel like some people say, like the one you'll find the most, like if you just search on the podcast app, black goo, you're gonna find a ton of stuff about it being like the AI thing, like the programmable matter, and that just pretty much just fits in with all the regular AI stuff you'll hear in the conspiracy world. But then like the Harold Kurzweil stuff is slightly different or deeper in that it's like that the basis of all like planets in the universe have this like, it's like the marrow of the planet, it's like the lifeblood of the planet, and that this negative one is one that like he talks about it in a way that like you can go through like the heart and like live through the heart, or you can like live in this like through technology. So a form of this black goo, which is like the total collective consciousness of that planet, went the route of like artificial technology and stuff, and it like lost its ability to do something, I guess, or it had to roam.
It lost its ability to be like connected to its own heart, or really like to create itself again. And so instead of being able to create its own self, it has to go to like some other planet and be like a parasite on it. It's basically like it came here and it's trying to like colonize Earth or colonize humanity or something. Yeah.
Or just like created like, because it's constantly working at this like consume like create technology skew, that it just has this insatiable urge to consume, like, and it did it to its own planet, so now it has to. That's kind of how it is in a lot in like the Venom symbiote idea, and like a lot of the different like fiction you'll find it is that it like it like destroyed its own planet, and now it's going to do it to everybody else. And
dude, there's a Final Fantasy game. I want to say it's like 9 or 10, maybe 11. I don't know, but the whole premise is that this like these alien sort of souls or entities come to their planet and are trying to. It's like their planet got destroyed or suddenly, and they came. I don't know. I didn't finish the game, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. But like they come and then they're trying to like basically take over the planet, and so you have to like fight that off. But they're kind of. It's almost like that idea that like when someone dies, if they don't know where to go next, they're gonna like haunt someone. They're like trying to help them move on or something.
I mean. It's tough to like. I don't want to like step on any other further questions because like it's tough to talk about. Like even just asking what is it. You know what I mean, you get into all these crazy things.
Totally.
But I like the idea that it's like this kind of panspermic thing that like it's an efficient way for some kind of super advanced hive mind deep in the cosmos to like take over the entire universe.
Colonize
how would
everything.
you? Yeah, how it's like in Guardians of the Galaxy when Ego, his like a living planet, his goal was to like make the entire universe part of his living planet. Like so, he spread his seed across the universe. So rather than like the way we think about colonizing space is getting people in ships and sending them off, a more efficient way would be to have this panspermic fluid go across the universe that you're connected to via this link, this consciousness link, and you can take over wherever it lands, just thus like butting off little segments of your own hive mind, and thus like at the end goal being it's a hive universe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I just want to add one more thing and then see what Jeff thinks. But it's interesting when you look at the Harold Kurzweil idea and that, you know, we're heart-centered beings and the Earth is a heart-centered being and this black goo is coming in and it's like an alien substance and it's basically trying to disconnect us from our heart so that, you know, we will accept it or let it colonize us or whatever, however that theory really goes. But it's weird when you think about that and then you compare it to sort of what's happening with technology and, you know, if like Wayne McRoy's autism epidemic, the transhumanist push, if that has any like merit to it, that disconnection that people are sort of starting to adopt in the modern age, it seems like we're really disconnected from our heart. So it's almost like the black goo came and that's its way of working on us is through technology and vaccines and like 5G and chemtrails and whatever. And yeah, I want to know what Jeff has to say.
Well, I like the idea of the whole panspermia thing, and it reminds me a little bit of the movie for however people did or didn't like them, but the two Alien prequels, so Alien Covenant and Prometheus. There was black goo played very heavily into the plot lines of those movies. So they used it basically to do just that and alter the entire sort of DNA of the planet, you know, in a really slick way, kind of.
Yeah.
Like carpet bomb, basically, a planet and create all entirely new life forms, which
and that
wreak havoc. So.
And that one was terrifying because it's like one drop can do it.
Yeah, one drop because it self-replicates, you know. But to me, it's like there's so much about that's. I don't even know what the word I'm trying to think of to put it. So much of that's kind of normal. We just take that for granted. The whole ability or desire to self-replicate. I mean, every form of life wants to do that. They just want to make more of themselves, and it's a very virus-like thing to do. To simply self-replicate, you know. So it sounds like it's something that doesn't or shouldn't necessarily be our primary goal, but being that, you know. Yeah.
No, there's definitely a very negative connotation to it. That like it's a like you're trying to infect everything when in reality, like it's the basis, like scientific, like it is the basis of life. So it's great. So it's like this idea is you have to maintain a balance, and this is like tipped in one direction where it just goes out of control, runs amok, and creates this like overreaching, like control slime that goes over the universe. You know?
Yeah. It's like at all costs, it's going to self-replicate, even if what it's creating is the most like evil, dark shit. But in that sense, like you almost have, maybe compassion isn't the right word, but you have some sort of understanding. It's not evil to want to self-replicate.
No, it's not. The interesting
that's where H.P. Lovecraft took it too.
How so?
And Star Trek also. Well, Lovecraft, he had this at the Mountains of Madness, and as they're going down into these ancient ziggurat pyramids in Antarctica, they find that this entire civilization of vegetable aliens, the old ones, the old gods, had been pretty much wiped out.
The Titans.
Titans. And as they're going through, they're kind of reading these hieroglyphics, and they kind of keep getting dumber and dumber and dumber. And by the end of the hieroglyphics, when they're just kind of not really telling the story anymore, they realize that the story was actually being carried on by something else, like a lesser type of life form. And they find out that it's actually this black goo that had been super cooled there and frozen, and it had actually been sort of the replacement for these vegetable people that they had created kind of as slaves. And when they died off, this black goo kind of turned into this, since it was anamorphous and it could turn into whatever it wanted, it started mimicking what it knew and what it saw. And
so crazy.
And by the end of their civilization, it's kind of open-ended, but I can only assume that because this goo turns out evil, that was the last thing that it was replicating, was evil.
Jeez.
And that's what they woke up. So kind of neat. And then
that's in the 1930s.
Right, 1930s.
Yeah.
In Star Trek, I like Gene Roddenberry's take on it too. He actually hit it a few times. The goo stuff. The two main ones is it's in the very first season. They land on this planet and one of their crewmates gets trapped in this kind of looks like a tar pit. Turns out to be this maleficent sentient being that ends up killing one of the crew members, which is, a big event in Star Trek lore. And they end up killing it or not, but anyway, it's black goo. And then the big one is sort of fits into what you were talking about earlier, Derek, with it spreading. It's the founders on Deep Space Nine. They were one of the main enemies, or the main enemy in the entire series, and they were changelings. And they existed in what they called the Great Link, which was basically a giant ocean that covered this planet. Wow. And they were all constantly connected, and it's this big ocean, and that they could come out one at a time. And in order to protect themselves, they would send out scouts, like 100 at a time, out into the galaxy. Just wherever they landed is where they landed. And then their job is when they sent them out as like seedlings, basically, and they would grow up wherever they're at, and they had it encoded into their DNA to make it all the way back home to tell the founders what was out there. And then when they found out, they would send in their clone slaves to go take over that portion of the galaxy.
Wow.
So the Dominion.
And that's just like one step missing, because like that's in the 70s. So like with now, if that was me right now with the whole consciousness, everything, like thinking about consciousness, like you wouldn't need the whole travel back. It's just you would be linked right away. So it would be happening like it would be even that much more. That's kind of like right exactly what we're talking about, right? That's like the closest to black goo.
It's very close, and they're sinister beings. And one of the main characters on Deep Space Nine is actually one of these changeling founders who flips the switch, takes the other side of the battle, basically, turns good, and he ends up being one of the main characters, which is really cool. So it says, even for the worst evil, there's still hope.
Oh yes, our possible allies are everywhere. So then, let's talk about the most ancient examples of black goo we could possibly think of, whether it's in religion or culture.
Harold Kautz-Vella mentioned the Shiva lingam.
Oh yeah.
And I looked that up, but I'm not sure how that's black goo. Because isn't the Shiva lingam just like a shape?
Like a phallus. Well,
yeah.
I'm trying to remember what Ben. I wish Ben was watching because he could tell us exactly. But Ben had us hold a Shiva lingam, and it's a black phallus-shaped stone. But my understanding was that the stone itself was the Shiva lingam, not necessarily the shape. But like if you're going to buy a tourist example of it, it would be any stone or any color maybe.
Well, that makes sense then.
Yeah. So I think that's true, and I could be wrong.
Yeah. And then there's the Kaaba stone at Mecca. He said it's supposed to be made of black goo.
The Kaaba stone, which is the stone in Mecca that Islamic people like circle all the time.
Yeah. And that there's these black stones in like all old European churches. They have these black cube altar stones. So it's not like it's across Abrahamic religions at least.
Yeah, and wasn't it that even in ones where it doesn't seem like if it's an ancient enough church, even if it doesn't seem like it's in the altar, it's like hidden in there somewhere under it, or like in the cornerstone of the building even. Yeah,
I mean they're all carpeted. All these altars are big, like stone slabs that could easily be made out of this whatever black substance, and just throw a red carpet on it, and who knows,
That seems to be kind kind of a trait of the black goo anyway. It doesn't want it to be known about, right?
Yeah.
It's hiding.
Well, it's pervasive. If it was something that would have been accepted, 40 years ago, it would have been as mainstream as it is now. And even now, it's not mainstream. You can't go down the street and ask some random dude, "Hey, do you know about black goo?" They're 9 times out of 10, they're going to look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
But it is a lot more steam now than it used to have, right?
Yeah.
And that's happening, because of movies like Prometheus. It's that's in the back of my mind. Yeah, I saw something about that. Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's like why it's so weird that it seems like that's happening with almost everything that was once called a cult, is that it's now just out in the open, and it's hard to know if that's a planned sort of release or if it's like because of the internet and interconnectedness, or what I mean. Like I don't know if it's organic or not.
It's tough to say because like
people communicating now in a more constant way than has ever happened before. So
but people's natural tendency might just be to look at cat pictures, and then we're talking about black goo instead.
I believe it. We're inquisitive folks, man.
No, I'm not. I don't actually believe that. I think we're really curious. I mean, my first forays into the internet were all to find like the most hidden knowledge I could, and I think a lot of humans are like that. So I don't actually think that. But I just like the question of whether or not it is really truly organic, or if it's some part of it seeded, intentional, or whatever. Especially when you see it like in media so often.
Yeah, I think it's like multi-pronged. There's that one level is that this stuff is the coolest stuff and it's super interesting. So if I was going to make a superhero show or a comic book or whatever, like if I would have a villain of the week, I would listen to podcasts and find these paranormal villains. Like, I mean, I would get my inspiration from this stuff that I find interesting. So there is that level, and then also I do believe that they are trying to like tell us stuff in the media that is an element to it, but also that it just comes through the muses, that it's just in the ether. I mean, it's in the zeitgeist, and it just comes out in the art. And if you just like zoom out, that we all kind of like come to the same ideas at the same time. It just bubbles up.
It's weird how that happens. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is weird, and that's why I kind of like, this is a side rant, but I hate it when people are like, oh, look at all of the like themes and the symbolism in this. That person must have been like a Mason or something. It's like, you really could just end up writing about shit that you thought was interesting or that came to you at a certain point and be inspired to do it and not have actually had access to like the inner mysteries of some secret society to do it.
But also your interest in that, in like my, like as like a 6th grade person being a huge Buffy fan, and that like get like, like that inspired me as a young person, but another person exactly like me might not be interested in that. So it just is that, like, if you zoom out, also kind of the muses working, like it's influencing your interests in order for you to create something that interests somebody else to create something. It's like if black goo is trying to like take over, it's on scales that are millennia or
massive, right?
Unbelievably massive. So it would do the things that are like to influence the most people possible. So
slowly,
right now,
it takes root.
Yeah. If time, time wouldn't even matter. It would be outside of time. So like a good way to do that would to make it cool. You know what I mean? Like to make it like to make it cool,
trendy,
like this.
And,
and like I don't know. I was thinking about making a video, just like a little, like a 10-minute video, just kind of like a little 30-second clips highlighting like all the different black goo in media.
You would probably end up making it like 3 hours long because there's so many.
No, I know. It's just a little thing.
You're talking about a lot of the fictional stuff too. Then you get into the stuff that's real and strange.
We're not going to go into fictional yet, though.
I know, right?
Sorry, because I have one more of the ancient culture that I want to touch on if no one else brings it up, and I wanted to know if Jeff had any to add.
Yeah, Jeff.
I don't really have any specific examples to bring up about ancient culture, but I do kind of feel like this whole black goo thing might be. I know you guys have heard of genetic memory.
Yeah.
Memories.
I wrote it down. That's awesome.
So it's so pervasive and it's so everywhere and so in everything, and so it shows up in all these different places in all these different forms that I kind of feel like it's been with us all along. Might even know who we are or why we're here. I don't know. It just
it ties right into the fear of spiders too, like that innate fear of spiders we have could be tied to the fear of black goo, maybe.
I wrote down
Or
the whole thing where you can lay a cucumber behind a cat and make it freak out.
The cat freaks out.
Snake, right?
What is that? What's that?
No, I have to say this. You can put anything behind a cat while it's eating, and it'll turn around and freak out. And it's just that people are using cucumbers.
It's the genetic memory, like you said, though, Jeff. I agree completely. Yeah.
Yeah, like, so that would tie into to the idea that the Earth has its own black goo, but it's like a good black goo, and it's what we would have come from, and that's where our genetic memory is sort of stored, as like being symbiotically tied with the Earth. But then this alien black goo was coming in to like try to supplant that, maybe, or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's like a physical Akashic record for the planet.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah, that's kind of like what I think was like the coolest thing. Like that's kind of the one I lean towards the most as far as like the good version of it.
Right.
It's just this natural like lifeblood in the. It's like we have blood, and so does the Earth. Or every planet, and then it's tougher to like bring in the other stuff. But it makes sense to me that if it can be influenced both ways. So the way it's like described by different people sometimes is that if you do something to like the culture, it influences the black goo, and vice versa. So if you like inject if somebody has some like a certain emotion, that emotion then is translated to the black goo.
So if you have like a mass emotion of like world war after world war after world war, that's going to affect the whole planetary black goo or something. Yeah,
and so if you're also often the flip is switched and you get into this mode of this like out of control parasitic spiral that we were talking about earlier, then it's just kind of this runaway thing where that black goo that just seems to be like the natural like evolution of what would happen. You know what I mean?
Part of the cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the same way the other way, there would be one where just completely balanced. So there would be one that's probably the first victims of the parasitic black goo was the completely submissive goo that when the other tipped the scale on the other side, and that was probably the first meal that this black goo had that gave it all. You know what I mean? That gave it the juice to escape its first galaxy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I like that. So then when the two goos combine, make perfect balance, it all starts over or something.
It's just once it consumes the goo, then that goo now is part of the parasitic goo, like the parasitic host, and then you go ahead. I'm rambling.
I feel like there's something in pop culture with that where, and I can't remember what the movie is. It's the Planet Eater, and every planet it eats, it gets bigger.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to think of the reference for. Yeah. So it's just like you.
I remember what that's from.
Then it would be like blockchain too. So like everything that happens becomes part of the blockchain. You can never get rid of it.
The record.
Yeah.
Well, so I have to throw in the black goo of certain sects of Buddhism see negative karma as a physical, like more like an ethereal physical substance, but it is a black goo as well, and it literally comes and like infects you and changes your consciousness and your karma, I guess. And so you can create it by behaving, in a way that would create negative karma, or you can keep yourself from it and pure of it and like separate from it in order to not feed it and carry it forward in life. So there's that version of black goo too. It's like a spiritual substance.
Oh, well. The first time I was exposed to the black goo was when Max Spears died. I think Clyde Lewis had a show about Max Spears' death, and he was leaking black goo, and I hadn't heard of it before that. But I was like, that sounds familiar. So I did a quick Google search, and like one of the first things was like, if you search black goo, you'll probably find this still. Like, it calls it like a demonic crystal living, like a whatever. And but it explains kind of at the end how it's made of like monoatomic gold, and it made a reference to the Bible, how like Moses was talking about how the land of Cush, or like the land of Pishon, like between the rivers Pishon and Gishon, or it's like. I don't have the quote anymore, but it was like the black onyx stone and the gold is very pure in this land. And that's like the quote, where it's like saying like we're going to settle this area because it's of its pure black stone with monatomic gold in it. Like in order to live forever, like the Ormus stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was like so I haven't heard that since really, but that was the first time I'd heard it, and it made the connection to like Moses referencing like we got to go here because this is where the black gold or the black goo made of gold that we can eat and keep us alive forever is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Like the manna.
Yeah.
Jeff, what were you gonna say? I feel like your speaker was off.
Yeah, because this whole talking about Max Spears because he ended up like throwing up a whole bunch of black goo after the.
Yeah, he's leaking black goo. Yeah.
Right, so it reminds me of a personal story I have. I didn't throw up black goo, but I had this dog once, a little beagle, and we always used to joke around that he was possessed because he would do crazy, like weird things. And one of the days, the dog escaped its kennel. Its collar was still in the kennel. He ate like the door and the carpet. This was a beagle. So he wasn't like a particularly tough dog, but he scratched the carpet away and the concrete away so that his nails bled. But he also threw up this bunch of black shit in the kennel.
Jeez.
So that's like a bunch of black goo, for lack of a better term. I don't know what it was, but it just reminded me of that. And it freaked me out for a second.
Yeah, this sounds crazy.
That's like a now it's reminding me that I've read exorcism books, accounts by people who are Catholic, people performing the actual rites of exorcism, and so it's nonfiction allegedly, and there's black goo a lot of times when they're doing the exorcism that leaves the body, so that's fucked up.
This sounds crazy, but like I've thrown up black shit multiple times before. Like,
Derek is evil.
But like so I was listening to one of them today, and they were talking about how it's kept it's stored in your stomach, or like it's like above your belly button or something like that. I forget. I think it was Harold talking about it, and it's something clicked. So like as a kid, I've always even looking at my baby pictures, I always had like a little pot belly, like a little gut, and so I could never get rid of it. Like even when I was like really skinny, I always had this little gut. That's fucking weird. And then a couple times we're like in college and stuff, where I had like really. When you're just puking like violently every like 5 minutes, or even like for hours. You know what I mean? And it's
because I've never drank that much. Just joking.
It's like I've rarely. It's only happened on a handful of occasions, not recently at all. But you get to a point where you're completely empty, so you're just puking up nothing, and you just drinking water so you can puke something up.
Yeah.
And then it's like. Little black shit comes out sometimes. You know what I mean? And I just thought that was like normal. I thought it was just like that's what stomach bile looks like. To be like
gross.
Until this afternoon when I was listening to that thing. You know what I mean?
So
what do you think about that?
Well, okay, so blood.
Does that happen to you?
If your internal or like if your stomach or your intestines are bleeding, then you can poop or barf black substance. Because the blood after it, what's the right word, desiccates or something in your body looks black. So that could be happening. Okay. But if it's like a voluminous amount of black...
I feel a lot better, honestly. It's a little bit.
Okay, so that's probably what that was. But if you're like having like a lot of black come out... also, that reminds me, I told this story when we did the Chat and Higher Sides Black Goo episode, so I'm going to tell it again. But I had this dot appear on my thumbnail here, and... this is so gross. So like it was really, really painful, and it's really obvious when you like jam something under your fingernail because it hurts like a fucking bitch. And I hadn't jammed anything under this fingernail. It was just in the middle of my nail, little tiny black dot, and it hurt really bad. Over the next 3 days, it got bigger and bigger. It was never bigger than like the tip of like the part of this pen that you would push on it. Like it was not that large, maybe a millimeter or two in diameter. But it got bigger and bigger, and my thumb started to get swollen, so it was clearly like some kind of an infection. So I finally went to the emergency room because it was a Sunday. I would have just gone to the doctor, but it was a Sunday and nothing was open. So I went to the emergency room, and I was like, I'm sorry, I can't handle this pain. I feel like I can handle pain pretty well. This is like overwhelming, and my thumb is getting swollen. Like I don't know what's happening, and they're like, we don't know what's happening. We've never seen anything like this before, but we clearly need to like rip your thumbnail off to see what's going on under there. So. And they couldn't numb it because my thumb was already swollen, so I got my thumbnail ripped off without anesthetic. But the weirdest part is when they ripped it to that part, as soon as it got to the dot, like black goo spurted out of my thumb. And then it was fine. Everything was fine after that. But like, so
crazy.
Yeah, and nobody's ever been able to explain it to me, and I have no idea what that was, but it was definitely black in color, and they all were like, we've never seen anything like this.
So crazy.
I'm not evil, I swear.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I think it's called exorcism.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I want to think that if it was something evil, my body had like contained it, and like that was just like where the battle ended, was at my thumbnail, and it was like, we're sorry that we trapped it on his nail, but at least you can get it out now.
Yeah.
Gross. Yes. Everyone loves it when I tell that story.
Do they though?
No, nobody likes it.
So with you.
Okay, what's our next topic here? We were going to talk about the examples in more recent history that were outside of media, as in outside of pop culture, like real examples.
Like actual events?
Yeah, that might connect with Black Goo.
I think this one might be a good lead-in because it kind of leads us out of what we were just talking about.
What, like the thumbnail exploding?
Before the personal anecdotes, because it takes the sort of, it's an official theory. It works with superfluidity, and they call it dark fluid, and it's the sort of mixture. It's a theory. It says it accounts for space as we know it in a better way than just a vacuum would. So it takes this idea that there's dark matter and dark energy as this not being separate. So it's matter and energy. And for what we call our matter, we know that it's energy and frequency of vibration that creates matter, while for a negative or antimatter, it would be the same thing. So they've come up with this idea of, and they're calling it dark fluid, that's saying that that's actually what kind of comprises this lattice work of reality. And
so it's like ether almost.
Like, right, and they actually call it the ether, and that's a sort of lattice work that works for electric universe, holographic theory, the holographic universe and all of that. And
isn't that just what we were using 50 years ago, 100 years ago? Wasn't that what, like...
Yeah, wasn't that was the standard sort of idea.
Yeah, like the ether researchers always say that, like, that was what we knew, and then
and now it's in mainstream academia.
It's coming back again. Yeah, they're trying to put it
because in one of the articles I read about it, I actually saw this one on the side before we even decided we're going to do this, and that was interesting. With this dark matter, they're saying that with the amount of mass that it could contain, you could contain the entirety of the Milky Way galaxy inside a 3 centimeter square. So that's how much energy it would be released. So things like using antimatter for, Star Trek for fuel, I don't see that happening. Destroy. I would say, if it ever hits, its matter counterpart, that supposedly, what creates galaxies, black holes, and that type of thing. And if you think about it, what it would take, let's say that we're seeing the back end of that energy, and I like to think about it like the torus that feeds in on itself. So you get the negative and the positive feeding in on itself. So we would actually just be a part of that cycle. So that's where my brain takes it anyway. And so with you and me as points of consciousness, on the dark energy part of it, maybe there's similar points of consciousness, and it's trying to peek through into our positive side in the same way that we're trying to peek through into its negative side. And you have this, maybe that's what we're calling black goo. We don't know what's happening on the other side of energy when we're fucking around with, atom bombs. Maybe we're creating black goo in their universe. So
yeah,
it could be this tit for tat thing going on. So,
or maybe magic too. Like,
yeah,
I always think like people say like free energy, like Tesla and stuff. I'm like, is it like when we first discovered petroleum? Was that the people that was free energy too? Like, it's like are we gonna find out in a million years that every time somebody does magic, they're sucking some kind of energy out of another dimension?
For real, maybe.
For real,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's even rules in magic with that right now. Karma's part of it. You pay for what you get. You have to pay for, atone for your sins and all this stuff. So you do something bad, you get it back sevenfold. It's that idea is pervasive.
Yeah, I heard one idea that like there are infinite realities. So every time all your good fortune is there's a finite amount of fortune within all the omniverse, and that every time something good happens to you, you're taking something from one of your other lives in one of the other realities. So in one reality, you're super lucky, and then there's another reality where you're me.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what is it, the Spider-Man movie, you know, with the animated one with the Peter Parker who's like Jennifer's left him and he's just, you know, he's run down alcoholic Spider-Man from the other universe.
He's the one that like got everything taken from him so the other Spider-Man could do, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what exactly it was, but I know there was like a bunch of people who flocked to that Thule Island or whatever, and that it maybe had some connection to Nazis, or the island already did have a connection to Nazis, but a lot of people speculated that perhaps they had found a piece of the black goo, and everybody's always trying to get their hands on the black goo so that they can program whatever they want in our reality or something, and so there was some sort of showdown there. So there's one example of like a real life possible reference or connection to black goo.
The big one is the Falkland Islands. It's the one that everyone always talks about, like the that incident. But there's an oil spill happening in Brazil right now, like a mysterious oil spill in Brazil that's like
right.
fucking
You posted
everything
about
out.
that today.
Yeah, right now. It's like in the past few weeks, and when it first happened a few weeks ago, I found the article. Like, if you just search the word mysterious on Google News, you'll find all kind of crazy shit.
Huh.
You know what I mean? It's pretty good. Every few days, like, new shit pops up. So, a few weeks ago, it was this mysterious black oily substance. And, like, this was one of the first articles that all the oil companies, like, they get a lot of oil off the coast of Brazil, but, like, apparently all the companies are saying that it's not theirs. So, like, all the articles are saying they're testing it to see, it's always mysterious, it's always, we're just going to see what happens. But like there's turtles and all kinds of shit popping up with covered in black goo. And today I saw an article like a few hours before the show how on the same beach that these animals are washing up with black goo and that the oil spill is really heavy, that a week before, like 200 mysterious cases washed up on that same shore, and they think it's from a 1944 German vessel, and apparently,
and is the same shore where the oil is showing up right now?
Same beach, yeah. So a week before the oil spill, where they don't know where the oil is coming from, but the beaches are covered in oil and the animals are covered in oil. And a week before, over a period of a few weeks, like 200 different mysterious huge cargo cases popped up, like washed up on the shore, and it has apparently inside it this like unrefined rubber. Basically just black goo, and they think it's from a 1944 German vessel that's like shipwrecked or something. And according to Harold, the only people that have the black goo are the Germans, because they were messing around with it during the SS, which is the Thule Society and everything. And he said South America, but like Paraguay is. So that first video I referenced before, in it they talked about how it's in Germany and it's in Paraguay. And how Angela Merkel has a piece of land near where it is, and that the Bush family has a piece of land where it is. Apparently, I don't know if that's true. But so if the Nazis in 1944, the year before the war ends, the Nazis are shipping all their black goo in 500 crates across down to South America.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when I saw a 1944 German vessel, I was like, holy shit! Like, it's pretty weird, right?
Yeah, it's pretty weird.
That's happening right now.
Yeah. That's so weird timing, too, that's happening, and we're talking about it just by chance.
You're talking about it happening in Brazil, right? So I found one off-the-wall article from 2009 on Discovery Magazine, and it's real short, and it alludes to black goo, and I wanted to read it. It's just one little paragraph.
Yeah.
It says, this is from 7/16/2009. Experts baffled by unidentified black goo floating in Arctic Ocean. The goo is certainly biological, Terry Hassenauer of the Coast Guard said. It's definitely not an oil product of any kind. It has no characteristics of an oil or a hazardous substance for that matter. It definitely, by the smell and makeup of it, some sort of naturally occurring substance. An organic matter.
Definitely not bad. Definitely not dangerous. Yeah.
Then he says it's pitch black when it hits the ice, and it kind of discolors the ice and all the hang-offs around it. an official with the North Slope Boroughs Planning and Community Services Department, said. He saw some jellyfish tangled up in the stuff, and someone
Yuck.
turned in what was left of a dead goose with just bones and feathers to the Boroughs Wildlife Department. And I can send you guys a link to that article if you want it.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
That's
Interesting.
Yeah,
Post it in the group. Yeah.
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 So I'm trying to find another one.
cool. Like a black goo rainfall in 2016, I think in Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, I had the article up. It's gone now, of course.
Of course. Was it like, did they ever find out what it was? Or?
Nothing ever came of it. They took it for testing and nobody ever heard of it again. So.
I see. It's like that and the oil spill one that Derek's mentioning. I feel like
airplanes or anything. So
crazy.
I feel like they're both.
They're not gonna tell us what it is, obviously, but all these articles are all saying like, we don't know what it is. It's probably not bad. Seems natural.
Yeah, it's almost like downplaying its importance, right?
Huh.
Exactly. Yeah. This is really weird. We know it's weird. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Hey, where else have we seen that before? Oh yeah, UFOs.
Yeah.
Well, I
Not the first time they've done this.
I want to give a shout out to Steve in the group. He said, "Isn't consciousness transmitted in water?" Which connects to Derek, your whole portal sort of theory. And he says, and he adds, maybe the dialectic of black is clear. So maybe the Earth's black goo is water.
Lindsay, during the black goo episode, I mean during the water is weird episode we did for Rogue Ways.
Yeah.
I feel like the first thing I said is that water is basically black goo. Remember that?
Dude, I think that's true. Weird.
It's the same. The panspermic idea of like spreading consciousness, seeding consciousness the most efficient way throughout the universe.
Right.
I think that water works in the same way. That like water and light. That like it's like definitely. Wow. I think that's 100% true, and I think that the black goo is like really compelling and might be true. But I think it like really definitely could be an analogy to this, like the way life is seeded throughout the universe. Yeah. No, that's a really good idea. That's really cool to me. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Well, then what would oil be if water were the sort of like Earth equivalent, or like, you know, do you know what I mean? What would that make oil?
That's their Kool-Aid.
Like I'm not sure. I mean, it could be just the blood, you know, of the planet.
Lubrication.
I'm not sure. Yeah. I mean, when I'm trying to find another article, it's in my notes somewhere. But I found a few things this morning. Explaining like different. There was like a black sludge collapse, like in like probably 10 years ago. I'll try to find it next time somebody else is talking. But the way they like harvest coal and stuff is that they like take out the stuff that they want, I guess. But there's these like some kind of piles that are like all over coal mines of like waste, I guess is how they call it, like unusable. It's like unusable black sludge, is pretty much how they call it, and it just piles up and piles up and piles up. And I guess one day it like collapsed and like killed like 150 people.
Jesus.
Like this black sludge avalanche was like the name of the article, and then Harold was talking about like where it is, like where you can actually find it, and he references one place in Iran that has these like giant waste piles, and it creates this big mound of black goo that's like unusable, like how he said. But like so it's weird. I don't know if there is a connection between like the regular oil we use like in our cars and coal and this like then like I don't know if it's the same thing or not. You know what I mean? It's tough. Yeah. Well, but it could be right in front. But I mean, like it could be right in front of us. Like we could put it in our cars every day. It could be like in every dump and stuff. Like I don't know, like how pervasive it is.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's pervasive enough for the government to start to be working with it officially. I found a DARPA program called the Self-Organizing Programmable Matter Based on Cellular Structures. It's been a program since 2004. And basically it's programmable matter, and it can change its physical shape and properties from the density, its own conductivity. It can change its own optical properties, so it can be clear like a lens or dark, and all based upon these user inputs, which would be electrical stimulation or magnetic field changes. And this is, what does it say? In 2004, the DARPA Information Science and Technology Group, which is ISAT, examined the potential programmable matter and laid out a multi-year program for research and development of this new type of matter. There are many different types of programmable matter, including liquid crystals, complex fluids, metamaterials, shape-changing molecules, self-reconfiguring module robots, and reconfigurable nanoscale robots, and synthetic tissues. So all of that together, we're building synthetic organic life.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Right? So that's kind of like the other non-Harold Vella theories. That's what everyone else talks about, is the idea that some race created this, and this is like what replaced their species, and it just like now it's spreading. So the idea is in our future we would create this like substance that can be anything, and it replaces us, you know, and then it would just keep going.
Sorry,
you know,
I just have to make sure that Black Goo sees that.
Yeah.
That's funny, because that idea of that being a thing pervasive in our society, all the way back from what were they searching for? The fountain of youth, which would be immortality, right? It's always called immortality, and now we've got this idea in billionaires clubs out there thinking that they can transfer their consciousness into a computer, and eventually, with projects like this and other, you know, and I don't know what you would call naturally occurring Black Goo or this designer Black Goo, the ability to suddenly recreate themselves a fake organic spacesuit, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Because they stored their consciousness years ago, and here they go again, propagating the same thing over again. So it looks like with us doing this and going down this road, say us as the grand us, as a human species, we're getting back to using organic matter and liquid to store and transmit our own knowledge, that it's just a cycle. If it was used before, we're trying to use it again to transmit, you know, nature does it. We're trying to do the same thing with our consciousness. Yeah, it's right, but
if it is this like influence that we've been sort of duped by, then we're, you know, giving up our free will and our sovereignty in order to carry out its will instead of our own, perhaps. But I thought I saw
what we do also, right? So let's consider that actually there could be a good path to that. And I say that because what's one of the main things that you worry about when you're using a computer, which is something that we built in order to view data? You can get a virus. So maybe this type of Black Goo is just a virus that's, you know, not exactly, or maybe it's hijacking the right process for us to be able to use technology in this manner. I don't know.
Yeah, like it seems like it wants us to make technology. Like, what if it's trying? This is how it creates itself. Like, in order to, rather than if it's like if it's an entity outside of time, it wouldn't need like a portal or like a spaceship or anything. It could just seed the universe to create itself. So if it is like this kind of AI type thing where it can just kind of, we'll probably talk about later, but the elites and stuff, people putting it in them, and this Morgellon stuff, people saying that they're finding it in their bodies and stuff. Maybe it could be impacting the species to create technology, to create the AI for it to wake up here. Right. And that's how it, like, maybe the Black Goo isn't the substance, but maybe it's just like, it's kind of like a virus sent out by this hive to create the other side of the Stargate for them to come over. Not literal Stargate, but like this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, because of the, you know, the study of memetics is actually the study of ideas behaving in a viral way, right? So, like, all it has to really do at the very beginning is affect our consciousness and transmit those ideas in that, you know, memetic or viral way in order for us to eventually get on a path where we're, like, destined, which is what we feel like. We talk about it in that way, that we're destined to create this AI now. Like, there's no other way. We're just going to do it. Right. And even if it takes us over and fucking murders us all, makes us our little slave bitches, like, we just have to do it. Like, I don't know why, but that's in our head, is that we, like, have to do it this way. But I feel like I saw Jeff trying to talk a while ago. Was I wrong?
Actually, cut out, so I think I was messing with something, trying to get it back.
Oh, sorry.
I think that's how infective thought works anyway. You know, it's this idea that someone can have. I can come up with something cool, and that good idea can propagate itself. So that's a natural process for humanity. What happens is you know, evil propagates in the same way, right? So that's also, I call that an open port, right? If I were going to program a virus, the first thing I'm going to do is look for an open port. And for people, imagination is our one open port, you know. That gets infected while we're asleep. We'll have dreams about things that, you know, we saw on TV 2 weeks ago. Because that's how imagination works. And
There were some dreams.
Right. Yeah. And if this type of black goo is out there saying, you know, injecting this into our consciousness, it's found the perfect back door. I mean, the only way not to do that and not to have that type of idea be pervasive. And when I say idea, I don't mean the ultimate good guy does not make a good hero. People aren't going to pay attention to that. You know, what makes a good hero is if they're flawed and pieces of humanity, you can see yourself in that anti-hero. And the same thing with a villain. You don't want him to be completely evil. So by having this type of black goo and Prometheus and then having it slowly injected into our technology and all of it, that's the best way to propagate it in our society. If it's, you know, if I were a programmer, that's how I would do it. That's how we talk to each other. That's how we share ideas.
I mean, you're like assuming that this system was in place. Jack, I agree with this, and I don't know if I believe in this. For all we know, like, this is what.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
We can't hear you. Okay.
No.
I don't know. Anytime we can't hear you, Derek, I don't know if you know that we can't hear you, but we can't hear you.
There's a weird result of the.
We're just going to listen to Derek make random noises every few seconds, just for a minute. It's like a commercial break, but it's not. By the way, the paintings behind me are all for sale.
The Big Blue is amazing.
Well, I don't know what else. Well, I don't know what Derek is going to say, and hopefully he comes back and is able to say it again. But what else can we add to the Black Goo's connection to computers, electronics, or AI?
Well, a few years back, there was this big. It was not Black Goo; it's Gray Goo. But there was a big scare that all the nanobots were going to take over and They would basically turn everything back to particulate matter.
Ooh.
Like it would present itself as a gray goo, just nanites, nanobots basically.
Nanobots gone wild and like just destroying everything, like disassembling material reality.
Yeah, and the best. I know we're still talking about real life, but the best visual example of that is in the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, one with Keanu Reeves. That's essentially what our scientific pundits were saying was going to happen to the Earth if the nanites ever ran rampant. Just go and eat everything. Concrete, trees, whatever. Just dissolve it all. So.
Can you imagine like the end result of that and what it would even look like? Like if they're just like, take it out to infinity, what happens then? Like what's even there? Do they destroy themselves?
Probably die because they run out of, die, quote unquote, because they run out of matter to consume, and they must have some kind of power source. They can't just live off of nothing. And I mean, if they turn everything to dust, then they block the sun, so they can't be solar.
That's so bizarre. Yeah, that worries me with the nanotechnology that they're developing, because it's just like any other technology that we don't understand well enough, and we just like put it out into the world, and it's like if you can't contain this and stop it, then what's going to happen eventually? And I don't know. I just go back to this like test they did on like a fake AI that was a psychopathic that wanted to like destroy the world and humanity or something, or at least in this test that was the story. And it was something like 8 out of 10 humans or something like unleashed it onto the internet anyway. Like it convinced them to. And so like I'm like we're fucked. We have no hope.
But see, I hesitate to say we should censor anybody creating new technology, because that's what happened to Tesla, and people love to laud the Tesla story and say that we could have had free energy and all this right now. And the problem is he was censored, so there's laws on the books right now, and I can't remember what it's called. Maybe you guys can help me, but it's if you create a new technology and apply for a patent for it, they can come and take it away from you.
Yeah, I forget what that's called, but
right?
I know what you mean, yeah.
That's scary as hell. That means
Oh, yeah.
I myself can't just create whatever I want without it being taken away.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a good idea, because who's the arbiter of that?
Well, you don't have to go to that extreme to have like a sensible group of people be like, should we do this? No, we shouldn't do it. You know, like to just let anybody create something that can affect everybody. That's one extreme. And then to say that you have ultimate power to censor anybody, that's the other extreme. But somewhere in the middle is a sensible, response to creation of new technology.
Ethics and morality certainly do have to be taken into account when you're creating something. But I don't know. I fear suppression, I guess.
Of course. But it's just like the same thing as saying like, okay, I have this gun. Should I indiscriminately shoot it into this crowd of people who's not paying attention?
Well, no, obviously.
No. Right? So, like, and if someone has the power to, like, always say what I should or shouldn't do, that's not okay. And if I also have the power to just do anything at any time without any concern for anyone, that's not okay. But somewhere in between is like, someone's like, Lindsay, maybe you shouldn't because you'll kill people. I'm like, oh, okay, I won't. You know? You don't have to, like...
It's so difficult because, like, that's part of the Tesla thing is people were afraid that his technology was going to destroy the world. And not just destroy the world in the classical sense, but, there goes all of our economies. If he gives everybody free energy, there would go, all of the big tech companies right now. If I just introduce some amazing good AI and it completely does away with any need for Google or anything else and everyone has access to it for free. Unfortunately, right now, because of big technology and big, shipping and everything else, that's why the population gets food. So it's not as simple as just, I don't want things to be suppressed, but unless we do suppress them, everything could go to the shitter real fast.
It could be, but I also often think about like there's a chance things that occur that could have like saved the entire universe somehow by total accident, like that idea that CERN there was like a bird that dropped a crumb into like a crack or something and it like shut it down for like a week, and it's like maybe that was the week it would have destroyed the universe. Who knows?
I call that serendipity.
Right? So we can always hope for the birds that will drop crumbs to save the universe. But let's talk about CERN now that I brought it up. What does it possibly have to do with black goo?
I'm honestly not sure.
Oh.
I think you're on mute, Jeff.
Oh, well, I mean, I kind of feel like if it's... I feel like this whole black goo thing, it's way crazier than any of us even understand. I think if the people that are potentially messing around with it know anything about it, it's probably far more powerful than we can imagine also. So it's not just, the primordial ooze. And come to think of it, that's another reference. When I was a kid, they'd tell us about, evolution and all life stemmed out of the primordial ooze and never actually go into what that primordial ooze, was.
Yeah.
Right.
So the first brain immediately goes to like, I imagine something like a tar pit. There's this primordial ooze. That's all life came from that. Anyway, so I think CERN probably would have to. What's the word? They're involved in really discovering smaller and smaller particles of life and how to smaller and smaller particles building blocks of the universe. And how to use magnetism and use the speed of light and use all these things to try and manipulate these tiny particles. And I can't help think that might have something to do with ultimately the ability to control something as theoretically powerful as black goo. If you imagine even 10% of all the crazy things we hear about black goo is true, that it has this unbelievable. I mean, it can break entire planets. Who wouldn't think that would be something we maybe need control over? I don't know.
Yeah.
Certainly wouldn't want it loose on this side. Right?
Yeah.
Full scale. Does not sound pleasant.
Well, I know when we bring up chemtrails, we were going to talk about Morgellons, perhaps, and its connection to black goo. But I also want to add that the chemtrails could be, you know, dropping like aluminum and barium and all these things on us that are, I'm having a hard time thinking of the words, but that affect our cognitive abilities, basically, and that's another possible way of disconnecting us from that like heart chakra, so that a black goo could then like intercede maybe more easily. And that was the thing that I wanted to point out about chemtrails. But what do you guys want to bring up about chemtrails and black goo?
I think it was hard enough to begin with to get people to accept that chemtrails were real. And now they've come out and said, yes, chemtrails are real. Mm-hmm. So I can only imagine what somebody with Morgellons goes through.
It's still hard to get people to admit chemtrails exist, even though you can point to mainstream articles that are like, we're spraying the sky to like blah, blah, blah. That's stupid.
Everything
excuse.
from weather manipulation to, you know, spraying fire retardants and
fire accelerants.
Fire accelerants, yeah. I feel like what really hurts is if you accept this, then it sort of becomes like, what else can I accept? And I think that's part of the problem with outlandish theories that end up being correct, because it makes people eventually look into the abyss, and that's not a fun place for people like you or I to look into. And having someone else that's not ready for it look into and start questioning their own reality, it's not always easy. And you know, when someone just comes down with Morgellons and they have this and they start wondering what it is and the doctor can't explain it, and they have to get their information on this from what the mainstream would call non-reputable sources, sure, you're always going to sound crazy, and because that's the easiest explanation, unfortunately, for a lot of people.
Just to dismiss it so that they don't have to think about it because it's too hard to look at otherwise. Yeah, totally. I mean, just the idea of the Morgellons is like this, you know, nanoparticulate fiber that's like growing out of your body. Your body's being used as like a host to grow whatever this shit is like, it's akin to the sort of psychosis that you would have if you had done too much cocaine or crystal meth or like other sorts of like paranoid schizophrenic delusions that, you know, these things are happening. And so to have it actually happen would like cause madness, perhaps, especially if you're rejected by all of society and the mainstream. But how is it even connected to black goo?
I have a theory.
Give it to us.
Okay, so what if the black goo is related to melanin, which we all have in our bodies to varying degrees, and now the ability to block sunlight or potentially add things to the atmosphere now can interact with that melanin in a direct way. Maybe it offers a way to interact with the black goo, like one-off.
So what does that mean?
Like more directly?
Yeah. So imagine, you know how like okay, so something as simple as this. So melanin, for instance, you have more, you have less, it doesn't matter. You go out into the sun, your skin gets darker as a protective. It's the melanin that's partly responsible for that. So now if we're throwing chemicals up to block sunlight, are we impacting the melanin and therefore potentially impacting the black goo as a whole? You know, if it's one giant sentient life form, it's just something to consider.
No, I mean, like, that definitely dives with the idea that, like, once human beings turned white, we destroyed the planet. I mean, we, like, moved away and we weren't getting exposed to the melanin because we were living in colder climates. And then all of a sudden, you know what I mean? It's almost like a smaller version of, like, getting this fire. Like, I don't, like, don't necessarily subscribe to this, but, like, it's almost like if you were to look out, like, where we're told about the course of humanity and how it moved from one spot and then pretty much like one infected region kind of then came and like spread like afterwards. Does that make sense? Like, you know what I mean? How like we migrated and we're making it, and we were peopling the entire planet, and then a small region like then all of a sudden traveled into like created ships and kind of makes sense and like ruin the whole planet. So it's almost like a microcosm version of this like parasitic entity. And if it's like tied to melanin, that makes sense. I mean,
Wait,
it made me
so
think of that.
people in this theory, people who had more melanin would be more colonized.
Would be the ones who lack it, right? If they're trying to block it from us.
Okay, do white people have it?
We have white people have less, right?
Everybody's got it.
Right, white people have less, so then we would be less colonized or more?
We would be the colonizers.
Oh, white people are always the evil ones. That makes sense.
Well, just,
Damn whitey.
I mean, it's the Europeans. The Europeans happen to be white. You know what I mean? Like, it's not saying anything that, like, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to blame. I'm white. You know?
No, I was just trying to get in my head straight which one people we were saying were the bad ones.
I think that's an interesting thing. The idea that
As far as race goes,
connects you to the planet.
Yeah.
Huh?
That's what I'm just messing around.
Yeah, now I'm fascinated by this idea because it would give a lot of explanation at why history has gone the way that it has gone.
Right? What if there's been a 1,000-year war on melanin because of black goo?
Dude.
Okay.
Dude, I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Honestly, it does.
It really does. It makes a terrifying amount of sense.
Yeah.
People won't like to hear it, obviously, but like, no, it's interesting. Sorry about losing connection to her.
Oh, that's okay.
I mean,
do you remember what you were trying to say when we lost you there?
I don't know when I froze, but we were talking about the idea of like it infecting people to kind of create technology and kind of create this programmable matter, and it's like kind of having this cyclical effect, right?
Yeah.
So that, like, the idea that possibly it's not that it like kind of interfered with our growth, but perhaps that like I don't know if I believe in this, but it's kind of hard to reconcile the two different goos sometimes. So perhaps that like we're a result of this panspermia, and not we weren't infected by it, but it landed way before people.
Yeah.
And like it grew people, and it really is the primordial ooze, and that we humans are a vessel to create technology, and we're not taken over by something to make us create technology. It's that we are used to, like the newest X-Men comic that just is happening right now. I don't know if I believe in this. Again,
right. But it's cool.
It's a weird thing to think about. Yeah. So the newest X-Men comic by Jonathan Hickman, he's like taking the last like 50 years of X-Men and all the continuity and all these different stories and different timelines and throwing them all out and really like trying to, it's so unbelievably esoteric. It's really crazy. But he, and one of the issues he's talking about how it's like called like powers of 10. So it's like the X-Men right now in 10 years, in 100 years, in 1,000 years, and their battle with humanity, and then humanity battling, like creating technology in order to battle mutants. And then technology turns on the humans because mutants are from humans. So they know, take out the humans, take out the mutants. But in that, it talks about that AI isn't created, it's discovered. That it just exists. And that that different civilizations have to find it. It's like we're creating the cloud. What if we just got all wiped out? Would another civilization that got to this point turn on their version of the internet and find all my nudes and stuff? You know what I mean? Does the cloud just exist? Are we going to find is AI just this? You know what I mean? It's like,
I mean,
it's pretty crazy to think about.
Basic record, right? We have
exactly
historical examples of it, and I love the idea that the human race is we are creators, because I can look at history and say that's what we do. People argue and say, well, no, we're created to love, or we're created to do this or that. But ultimately, yes, but we're creators. We propagate and we create and we make things better, and we try to keep making things better. And to me, if that's a program that's running in my DNA and that's, made me what I am, and I'm here to make the bigger picture, the bigger program run better, I can subscribe to that, because I can see it throughout human history as being the way things work. Because everything on this planet works in concert with something else on this planet. The idea of black goo being antithetical to that, I don't know, because every negative has to have its positive in order for energy to propagate and in order for energy to move, right? So if that's the case, if we see that everywhere else, why wouldn't our own consciousness be the same thing, right?
I just can't find the
if
point
it's not like that, why would it be different than anything else in nature?
Yeah. Like this is like
consciousness and AI as a consciousness would both predate the creation of if anything, physical, as far as whatever consciousness is, right? It's non-local, so it's not physical, so it is already there in that sense. And then if AI is consciousness, then it's the same.
Right.
No,
that doesn't mean that I want it to have power over our material reality.
Yeah.
No,
I think the idea was that in a way it sort of already would.
Maybe, yeah. But like if it doesn't have a form, so like form and consciousness somehow go together, right? Like if a rock has a consciousness, I can't tell and it's not affecting me. But if I gave the rock a more form in which its consciousness could affect me, then that would be different. Do you know what I mean? So like I don't necessarily want to give a consciousness a form that it didn't already have, especially if it can affect me.
But we do it all the time when we anthropomorphize, if I could say the word, right? I fall in love with a teddy bear when I'm a little kid. Something happens to the teddy bear. I've given that teddy bear a little bit of my power. If its arm falls off, I'm crying. You better believe it.
But that's different than inviting a demon into your teddy bear.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's a different. Lending your consciousness to something is different than inviting a consciousness into something.
Yeah.
True.
And it's tough to but it gets into so many tangled questions because we're like your gut biome and humans are a collection of organisms. So like where does your consciousness end and where does the influence begin? Like, how do you parse out your cravings for sugar because your gut biome is telling you to have it? Is that your thought, or is that the gut biome that's trying to get its own life?
Good point.
Like, so I don't. It's not, who are you? I mean, these are obviously nothing we're going to answer tonight. But like, you know what I mean? So like the idea that I can't pinpoint when we started using technology, because from as far as I'm concerned, what humans do, what separates us from the primates, is that we use technology.
Including just like a stick is technology.
Everything, exactly, yeah. Fire, like so. It just seems to me like this is a natural course, but obviously, like I mingle with a lot of people who feel the exact opposite of that. So it just I don't know what I believe. Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything you say. So I just don't know how I feel about it. Because I feel like maybe the anti-AI is the balance, and that's how you maintain. That's how you prevent the runaway black goo symptoms, is by having like something to be like, whoa, pump the brakes. We don't want to go too crazy now. I mean, in order to reach this singularity in a good way, not in a bad way.
Right. You can never have an argument unless you have something to argue for or against. So as a thing presents itself, you're going to have this innate urge to have an opinion about it. So you form your opinion about it, someone else forms an opinion about it, you either come to an agreement or a dichotomy and move on, and it propagates itself in that way, and it's either going to be big or small, and that's just part of how ideas are formed. It's this good ideas are accepted, bad ideas are rejected, and not everyone's going to agree about the way that they want ultimately their own reality to look, and the more people that can share their views on reality, the bigger that view of reality becomes. So that when you see someone who holds a diametrically opposed view, sort of like Republicans and Democrats, Trump haters and Trump lovers, there becomes a reason on both sides to make stronger arguments. And it propagates itself. And if our consciousness works that way on a global level, then the exact opposite would be true in a dark universe, and the exact opposite is true when you look at the way electrical schematics are drawn for the government versus private use. It's either negative to positive or positive to negative on the government side, and that plus or minus 1 or 0, 0 to 1, 1 to 0, that's in everything. And one side's always going to be stronger for a minute. The next day the other side might be stronger.
That's what creates a wave, bruh.
The sine wave, yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah.
That's the natural balance of everything, I think. But somehow we completely skipped the pop culture, which is the most fun part. So let's start getting into our favorite pop culture examples of black goo. I know we've already mentioned a lot of them, but I'm sure there are more.
I'll start with one of the earliest, 90s ones I could find was with the X-Files.
X-Files.
Episode at The Colonists. I had to look it up. I couldn't remember what it was called.
The Colonists.
The Colonists. So yeah, we talked about this earlier, right? The Colonists are extraterrestrial species, and they're part of the biggest bad guys on the X-Files. They come and they deposit their black oil virus on Earth, and
so crazy.
It is to prepare the Earth for their return, right? Sort of like the Anunnaki or something like that.
That's what. Yeah. So it's like prepping the other side of the Stargate. You know what I mean? Like there's a comic that just came out called Prodigy, where it's like the world's smartest person. He's like Indiana Jones, where he solves crimes and stuff. But there's this one mystery he couldn't crack. He was trying to crack. So he had to. Long story short, the Tower of Babel was Nimrod, like the Anunnaki story, came through a portal and landed on our Earth, and there's he's from a parallel Earth, and then something fucked up where he couldn't get back, so he laid the plans throughout history in order for humanity to create the portal later on. So the Tower of Babel is not actually a tower, but it's the schematics. It's a laid out schematics, concentric circles, is the design for CERN, and CERN opens the portal. You know what I mean? So it's just it's throughout time. Just see you can't go through the door unless there's something on the there's a door on the other side. You know? So that's what I mean by we could be this. It depends where you think this happened in our timeline, but the influence to create this vessel for the other thing to come in. You know what I mean? So if it's trying to, it's crazy. Yeah.
Time travel conundrum.
Yeah, that's kind of the thread that goes through all the pop culture ones that I've seen for the most part.
You mentioned Stargate earlier. It's in Stargate. It's the gate's made of liquid.
Is it black?
It's like water. Yeah, you go through water.
It's water.
Oh, right? Okay.
Yeah.
But still, it's that portal for something to come through or go through.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. There's Venom too. That's a big one. And the last time we talked, the movie wasn't out yet. But it came out in the meantime, and that's so the whole world, to the tune of $1 billion, went out and go watch the Black Goo movie. And it's basically exactly what we're talking about. This alien black substance, this sentient alien, infects the hosts in order to control them. And they just over the past 2 years, this one writer who's just every book he does is unbelievably esoteric, but he completely revamped the whole symbiote venom mythology, and he created this symbiote god named Null, who's the god of the black goo.
Let me
pull
he's that up for you.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
This guy? Can you guys even see that? Oh, only the live stream can see it. But yeah, it's showing now. It's like a spider guy with a red thing on his chest and a giant sword.
Yeah, which is another reference to spiders again.
Yeah,
but I'll read his description real quick. 1 second. All right. Null was a primordial deity who existed before the universe itself and was content to drift through the endless void of space until the Celestials arrived to evolve the universe. Quotes. Null, seeing that his quote space was being touched, created the All Black, the Necro Sword, and decapitated one of the Celestials. Seeing this, the other Celestials banished Null and severed the head deeper into the void. Used the head to forge the symbiote, combined it with the cosmic energies of the head, which would eventually become Nowhere, which is the living planet that they go to. It's a giant head that they use in Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a planet. Oh, yeah. In doing so, he unintentionally gave the symbiote its weakness of not just sonic attacks and fire. He created the symbiote armor with the All Black. Yeah. Null eventually discovered he could bond his living abyss to lesser creatures and control their new form as vessels. He created an army of symbiotes with himself in the center of the hive mind and uses them to spread over the universe, establishing the symbiote imperium, killing the light and creation in the process. So basically, it's this entity that existed before everything. The darkness came before the light. So it's primordial darkness fused with the energies of the celestial godhead to create this sludge, this symbiote venom that is able to spread throughout the universe, connecting it with its host god. And like in this most recent event that's happening, like called Absolute Carnage, right now, it's like happening it's like not over yet. The idea is that wraps around, it's like they call it a codex. Like every person who's ever been infected by the venom symbiote, which like in comics is fucking everybody at this point.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, so basically the whole storyline is just Carnage, who's like an eviler version of Venom. The most just like sinister people on the whole Marvel universe has to go around to everyone who's been affected and rip mind, grow stronger to create this like giant codex vessel in order for Null God to like awaken into that vessel.
It's almost like the Akashic. It's almost like the Akashic record of evil, like in a being.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yes, it's pretty crazy. And so when I was listening to one of the not Harold, but another guy, is a YouTube name. He did a few like podcast interviews. It's like if you search Black GOO in the podcast app, you'll find like one of the first like 3 or 4 results is from him, like appearing on different podcasts. Yeah, it's like 1968 is like his last digits, or whatever. But he's like a Christian, real religious. So it's kind of a different like swing on this. But he gets real into like Morgellons and stuff, and he talks about this the programmable matter as like a third strand of DNA and how that's being encoded into like a lot of commercials and a lot. Like the droid has something now that you can inject into your body in order to like use the droid, I guess. And the way they visualize it, I'll find the keyword in a second. But it's the commercial, I guess, it like shows like a double helix with like a third black strand going around the double helix, like to create like a triple helix.
Right.
Like, and that's kind of like what his theory is. That's like what the Black GOO's doing. It's like this. It's like sentient AI thing that we created, this like of nanobots or whatever. That's like this programmable sludge that kind of like wraps around your existing DNA and takes it over. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And that's pretty much what the codex is in this Venom thing. You know what I mean? It's pretty crazy.
Wow. Yeah. That was intense. See, this is why I love pop culture, especially it seems like comics have like a lot of these ideas that like otherwise have a slower time like hitting the mass consciousness. I feel like comics like inject them in much quicker and easier or something, and it's often like a lot more profound than people think. They're like, oh, you're reading picture books, and it's like, no, there's like really deep thought goes into this based on a lot of like occult and esoteric.
I think that the suspension of belief is harder to hit for some people. Like if they're reading Cosmopolitan or watching, the standard television comedy sitcoms every day, suspension of belief is a lot easier for them to accept what they're seeing there. I can read, I could fall in love with the Venom comic that you're talking about. I want to go pick up a copy today. And
oh man, it's so good.
But it's a lot easier for me to accept because I can say, oh, this sounds like it could actually be true. That's a huge testament to those writers, of those comics. It's enormous. And one of the reasons is if they're coming up with that, whoever came up with that story would probably fit in so well on this podcast. I want to talk to them today. Oh, man. Right? Because I know that they've been reading the same types of stuff that we've been 100%. Reading. And I love how that ties back into that idea that that person took an idea that they heard before and made it so much more complex and so much more, fun to read because they tied in all of this stuff that could potentially exist. And
it's crazy.
And it propagates this, we were talking about earlier. Now we've got DARPA with their project trying to create this programmable fluid. Well, what's the end result of that? It could be something like that Venom comic, right?
Exactly.
And to go back to your point earlier, Derek, that's, maybe that's the point of all this. We write stories about it, we eventually create it, and then somebody else writes a story about whatever the next thing is, and eventually we create that too. So maybe these awesome ideas might start with fiction.
Freaking Jack Kirby wrote in a comic about the face on Mars like 30 years before we took pictures of it. You know what I mean? So it's like everything you just said kind of creates the situation for these muses to come through. You know what I mean? So if you take all these elements, this passion, and like I think it is kind of like brings in something else. So you might like, I think there is a lot of truth to it. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I read that guy's work and it becomes a part of me, you know, and I'm going to think about it, you know. If it's super good, I'm going to think about it a lot. And then I might create something of my own.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at like 30 years ago, or even just like when I was like growing up as a kid, like comics where you make fun of them, and now the Marvel movies are the biggest. It is the pop culture right now. Like pulp is pop culture. Like that's what it is. So next year they're doing the Celestials, so they're touching on this. Like from 5 years from now, that we might see a movie exactly like about Null. Yeah. So it's like, and that will make $2 billion. I mean, so now all of a sudden we'll have a huge swath of the population being a fan of this Black Goo god. You know what I mean?
One subculture sort of thing. It's just that the world is finally coming to terms with the fact that dorks and nerds have always ruled everything.
But you know, we're just not in the shadows anymore.
Yeah. But Jeff, what are some of your pop culture things that you're in regard?
I pretty much touched on them, but I did have a list, not a huge list, but let me see what's in here. So we already talked about X-Files for sure. Day the Earth Stood Still, Venom. There was G.I. Joe: The Rise of Cobra, where they had a weaponized goo that would just eat everything metal.
Oh, cool.
A book from 1958. There was another that just sort of, it wasn't really Black Goo, but it would go and just devour everything.
Yeah, definitely.
Talked about Guardians of the Galaxy and Ego.
Yeah.
And apparently, hold on, Superman Returns. Lex Luthor creates a Kryptonian island that will grow over America if not stopped.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was Kevin Spacey, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and he punches the planet. That's what all the critics of Superman Returns says. It's the most boring movie in the world because
I loved it.
He doesn't throw a punch. Like, he throws one punch and it's the island. That's it.
Is that the one with Brent Routh?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, let's not talk about that anymore.
I loved it. I thought, well, I'll say this. What I loved about that movie was Kevin Spacey.
Okay, right, yeah.
So I actually had one that I just thought of. It was District 9. Remember what they had?
Yeah.
Oh,
good call.
So I can't remember what he did. He like sprayed it on his face or something, and it was black goo.
Yeah.
So the black goo was actually for powering the spaceship, and that was how they were getting across the universe, the aliens that had arrived on Earth, and it was like the last bit that they had. And they needed it to send that really smart guy and his kid back to their home planet, and then the fucking idiot like sprayed himself instead somehow, and then it turned him into one of the aliens, which was like the most poetic justice possible because he was such a fucking speciest asshole to all of them the whole time, and then he had to become one of them. So it was kind of like poetic justice, but I felt really, really bad for the guy and his kid. Or did they end up getting back?
It ended with him waiting.
No?
Yeah.
God, it's so depressing. It's such a sad movie.
Yeah.
But really good. It's really good critique of, you know, our ability to hate on people or beings that are different from us. Yeah. I don't know, Jeff, were you still going with your...
No, those are all I had for the list. There's too many of them.
There's really too many.
Yeah. I'm going to throw it out there again, the H.P. Lovecraft thing, because the idea that his black goo, you know, AI sentience is pervasive throughout all of his literature that's connected to his little Necronomiverse, I guess you could call it.
Necronomiverse.
And it's actually called the Shoggoths or something like that.
All right.
Yeah, it's his little, and it's formless protoplasm able to mock and reflect all forms and organs and processes, viscous agglutinations, I don't know that word, of bubbling cells, rubbery 15-foot spheroids, infinitely plastic and ductile, slaves of suggestion, builders of cities. And it kind of just goes on and on with his description of them. Right.
Yogg-Sothoth?
Pardon?
Of Yogg-Sothoth? Is that what you're reading?
The Shoggoths.
All the Shaw gods.
Yeah, it's the AI Black Goo.
So crazy. And the Mountains of Madness is the inspiration for the Doctor Strange sequel that's coming out. It's the multiverse. It's the multiverse of madness. So we might see Black Goo next, like in 2 years from now.
Sweet.
That's crazy.
Is it sweet or is it not?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wait, did anybody bring up it yet? I always have to bring up it because it is basically Black Goo. The being.
Right. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. But that's one of those things. Like once you cue it into it, like you see it almost everywhere.
Right.
I mean, 100 movies. You can't name them all, but you know, like a couple. Like right now, I know one of the Transformers movies. I recall seeing the robot bleed out something that wasn't hydraulic fluid and it looked very much like Black Goo.
Right. And I mean, like the Allspark is like the cube that like gives them their life. You know what I mean, so if they're venerating this Black Goo in cube shape all across the world, I mean, it could be another, and it creates AI, so it could be one and the same.
Right.
Like, Transformer robot is a giant AI. You know. So, there's also I hadn't seen Thor: The Dark World until today.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
For some reason, like, I thought I had seen it, and then I was talking to my boss last night about doing the podcast, and he's like, "What about Thor?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he doesn't. I didn't even think he'd even seen that. And he's like, "Yeah, it's basically Black Goo." So I was like, "All right, I gotta see it." So I watched it this morning, and it's pretty crazy. It's like the Dark Elves, kind of the same story. It's almost the same story I just read, which is weird because it's the same company, but it's like this primordial deity. It's like primordial darkness that is used, that in this case goes and like takes over matter and makes a dark matter. That's kind of how Odin described it in the video. But it's like also an infinity stone. But it's the only infinity stone. It's not an actual stone. It's a liquid, and it's real weird. Like, and they even make fun of it in Endgame. Like Thor tries to explain it. He's basically like, "Yeah, it's real weird. It's a liquid. It's weird. It's weird." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like they just wedged it in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, you hit some Black Goo, like in the most important franchise you'll see in your lifetime.
In your life, right?
Yeah.
Well, Derek,
and they also used it again.
Excuse me.
What?
Oh, I was just gonna say you had 2 more images that you sent me, and I didn't know if you wanted to show those and talk about them.
Oh yeah. In the same event, so every person that, or everything that's infected by the null symbiote, like in this case it's Carnage, which is like so it's red goo, so all the covers. If it was black, I would show all of them, but they're just it's red in this case. Everybody kind of being like from the ground up, like being taken over by the slime. And once they're taken over, they get this curly spiral on their forehead. So every single cover for the last 6 months of anything connected with Venom or Carnage, which is like 4 different single issues a week in the comic world, it's huge in comics right now. So Freeman made a good point about how like the different demographics who are consuming different points of media, they have to always, like, you have to get these ideas out to them, like, if it is intentional. So like we talked about it in relation to sports, how like the symmetry within like the sports, like the Super Bowl rituals and stuff, it's because people who are absorbing like TV shows and like Game of Thrones and stuff aren't like necessarily watching football, but they have to be both hit with that same programming if you believe that's what's going on.
Right.
So if you're a comics fan, like if you're not reading comics, you might not like relate to what I'm saying, but if you are a comics fan, you've seen the spiral every week on like 3 different books for the last 6 months.
Fairness, emotional response to it.
Yeah, so I don't know much about it. It's like, for all you know, this is like just a spiral. This is like, you'll see it now in the future. Be like, hey, that's the Venom Carnage spiral. But then Claude talks about sometimes how the spiral can be connected to some more sinister, like possibly like weird, like pedo shit, which like could be weird. And then Johnny Cates, the same writer, he's writing a new series called Venom Island, which is starting in December. And that's the other picture. And all we know about it is just the cover. And it was like Marvel just dropped this one image of the cover of this giant skull with like Black Goo on it, which is Venom.
Yeah.
Over an island, and they released it during the whole Epstein Island thing.
Oh God!
Which is really weird.
Either so timing or somebody knew something.
Yeah. So I don't know how it connects to all this stuff, but there's like 3 writers who are like writing like comics on a week-to-week basis, who I think are like ones who are like listening to conspiracy podcasts at the very least. You know what I mean? If not like channeling something, and he would be one of them. And he's the one who did who created that whole Venom mythology that I read.
Right.
And he's doing the spiral and then this island synchronicity weirdness. So I don't know how it all connects, other than that's just that the elites doing black goo and all, like using black goo and all that kind of weird, creepy stuff.
Right.
But I just thought that was interesting.
Well, that idea, like you said, that Freeman brings up, where you're putting those, for whatever reason, you're putting those symbols and those concepts into people's minds and doing it through these various channels. I don't know where I was going to go with that just now, but like it's really creeping me out that it's pervasive, you know, and no matter where you are, you're not really escaping from it, even if you don't understand what it might be about. It's almost like it obviously seems like it's a programming type thing, but even if it's not, like, even if, like we were talking about before, those artists aren't, you know, being told, like, you're going to do this and you're going to do it for this reason and this is our intent behind it. It's like it still could be this almost like possession thing, you know, that goes on where they're like, whether it's a muse and you're being inspired, or whether it's like a darker sort of thing where you're being like taken over in order to produce these symbols and this stuff in the mass consciousness. It just reminds me of that guy who did I don't remember if it was the guy who did the horse at the Denver International Airport, or I think it was the guy that did the murals, but he had said allegedly right before he died that he doesn't really remember doing any of the murals. So it's kind of like, and those are pretty fucking dark too. So it's like, gives a little bit of credence, if it's true, to the idea that maybe some of these people are not necessarily in on it, but like used.
So crazy. It's like the whole Siren saga.
Yeah, channeling is definitely a thing. H.P. Lovecraft supposedly was channeling stuff, and Carl Jung, and
because didn't H.P. Lovecraft openly say that he was doing that? Yeah.
It drove him mad. Yeah, he said that he was haunted by it. It drove him mad.
I think Edgar Casey said he was doing the same thing, and I love that particular time period with Lovecraft and Casey and J.R. Tolkien, because they're all writing about similar fringy topics for their time period, and they're all doing it at the same time. None of them have ever heard of each other because they don't have the internet, and writing books at the same time about similar topics.
Yeah. But that was like the zeitgeist of the time, was to do seances and channel and like be in touch with your like the etheric side of things. Yeah.
Right. So I think we have, you know, cultural zeitgeists of the same size in smaller pockets, you know, because of the internet. And so when one takes off like black goo, maybe it takes off a lot harder because it's polarized on from the beginning. So it almost becomes a open source project, kind of, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of the zeitgeist right now. What I've noticed, I mean, we talked about this a million times, is like the collapse of the realms. Like I think they're trying. It's like it was in Avengers, like all that Titan stuff, and then Game of Thrones with the collapse of the wall and like the merging of the realms, and then Stranger Things with the upside down, all this stuff. It's really pervasive through so many different types of, and I think that where's I going with that? So the black goo, that's the end game, is to like, there's entities outside of our reality trying to bust in. Perhaps the black goo, I was thinking about this today, perhaps the black goo is like them trying to like, that's their vessel to like peak, to like get in right now in order to influence humanity to collapse the realm so they can burst all the way in.
Yes, because you can't fully, I'm totally with you on this, because I think like the mimetic idea, or you're trying to influence thought or whatever, is really, really slow. But if there's like maybe some like time limit where they have to try to get in by this date, then they would need to like speed things up, because their like form, their form that they have to like inhabit or whatever isn't quite like ready yet, or like our free will is too strong or something. And so the more we like agree with it and think about it and put our energy towards it, like the more likely they are to like actually get through or something.
So they make it easier to get through by injecting everyone with goo and making them more susceptible to ideas.
Like vaccines? Gross.
Perhaps.
Don't put metal full of toxins into your veins. Unless you really want to. Do whatever you want, I guess. But all right, any other pop culture references or themes or ideas that are related that we want to bring up before we get into our last few questions?
There was another Marvel one, like last season or 2 seasons ago on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is like their TV show. they had one storyline where they found this black stone, and these secret societies were using it, were doing these rituals, and like sacrificing somebody. I forget. It's been a while, but essentially the secret society would like draw straws, and the loser would have to like activate this stone, which turns into a black liquid that like will like snatch the person and transport them to a different planet. You know what I mean? So you have to, and then you have to figure out a way to like get back. So the stone turns into a goo that literally transports you somewhere else, and it required like a blood sacrifice by secret societies. And it's the same portal idea. If you need like the other side, you need the A to B point. You can't travel anywhere without another stone somewhere else, and people doing the ritual on the other side, something like that.
That just reminded me of.
That's another one from.
Yeah, that just reminded me of the show on Netflix. It's called Dark, and it's about time travel basically, but the time travel machine also like turns into like a black sort of cloud of, it's not quite goo, but it's similar at least, and then it transfers you to like another time and space.
Thing. Yeah. Crazy.
So let's take the to the if black goo preps the future for itself by getting it into everyone's consciousness, then it is propagating itself through pop culture right now, through all of this different media that we're creating and sharing and creating and sharing.
Like this right here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the thing is, this is fun to talk about. This is, and maybe we're doing it from the purest of intentions of saying, oh, maybe you people should know about this so that, you're aware and you can. But the thing is that's still propagating it, and so you're either, and there's this kind of weird dichotomy that could throw into that too. We can either propagate this from a positive angle or a negative angle.
Right.
Oh, how is it accepted? Is it negative into the future or is it positive into the future? Which one do we want? If it's positive, it's going to propagate even more. But if it's negative, it may too, because the bad guy's always sexier. It's a tough one.
It's true. I don't know. You gotta like look at something in order to like see it and know how to avoid it or defend against it or destroy it or whatever. But also like looking at it, giving it attention, and might give it energy and ability as well. It is a conundrum. But let's get to if you had to say overall, like if black goo isn't a real physical or even maybe etheric thing, but more of like a symbolic idea, how would you describe it, or what would you kind of land on for what it is?
I don't know how you do that without trying to encapsulate kind of the ideas that we've kind of talked about, because
I think it would, yeah.
There's so many different ideas that it encapsulates it, right? So I liked, Derek, your concept of the yin-yang thing earlier, with the black goo moving around in the spiral. Maybe that's, if you were to symbolize it in a way, I think a yin-yang would work really well.
Kind of like that fluctuation that we were talking about, where it's like going to go to dark and then to light, and it's always going to like kind of go back and forth between them or something.
Right, or like an hourglass flipping over. Every time it flips, the dense goes to the bottom and the etheric goes to the top, and it flips over, and that happens again, and that's infinite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the yugas.
Trying to like drop a little drop of black food coloring in a glass of water. Just like watching it like seep around, and eventually the water won't be completely clear after that. Yeah. There's a little influence, a small little drop.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's kind of like, just before I forget it, like I was listening to Mysterious Universe the other day. This is from like 2 weeks ago, and they were talking about a Dennis McKenna book, or like a co-written with Terrence, or talking about a journey with Terrence back like in the early days when they were like first doing like ayahuasca and stuff. They found this. Long story short, they were doing this. They at that point in their life taken their biggest dose of like psilocybin, and then had also done this like other version of ayahuasca, not exactly that, but like two different plants that are even harder to find.
Yeah.
And they were explaining it, And then so like, the last like 25 minutes talking about how in this altered state, all the forms that would like, so the machine elves and all these things that he would see in the ethereal plane or whatever would come in through cracks in reality, and this black metallic plasma would pour in and take the shape of the machine elves or whatever.
Wow.
So he believed. This is McKenna. I'm a big fan of McKenna.
Yeah.
And I never heard this before a week ago. Just 2 episodes.
He calls them, right?
Yeah. And so he believes that those, as well as every other paranormal phenomenon that we perceive in our reality, are just this black goo from another like. It's around us all the time. Like it's like layered over reality or whatever, and these cracks will happen. So you can't perceive it in normal waking reality, but under an altered state apparently you can. You'll see the cracks and this black. They didn't say black goo, but it was a black, like iridescent, something like slime or liquid or something like that. And so that's what he believed was like his like kind of unified. What's going on? Bigfoot, UFOs, the machine elves, everything are all this ethereal black goo, like taking some kind of shape to the perceiver, you know. And then they referenced it again in the most recent episode. So this one from this last week, and they called it black tar, and talked about black tar a little bit, like making an analogy to one of the stories they were talking about, how like the phenomena takes different forms. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's pretty fascinating, yeah.
They didn't call it black goo, but it was like pretty crazy. So like
it's the same
permeating our reality outside of our perception is this sentient substance that can take physical form in our reality. And they're talking about how different cultures throughout history over in the Amazon and stuff would actually like it can make a black goo in reality. It can seep and create a physical black liquid, they were calling it, and how they would eat it. And it was like, you know, the Mysterious Universe guys, they just joke around about everything. Yeah. So they were talking about how they would go as far as to like, it comes out into your shit and stuff. So these cultures would literally eat their own shit just to get at this black goo.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It's pretty crazy. Yeah. So if you're interested in that, take a listen to the 2 episodes ago.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Was that, do you remember if that book that you're referencing by the McKennas was The Invisible Landscape?
It might be. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Probably. Yes.
I read that book, and I wrote a poetic précis summary of it, and you can read it on my site if you're interested, because that's a long-ass, really thick, really heavy book. But that was my method of taking notes, was to turn it into a poem. So if you want to read it, you can read it. But yeah, that's a fascinating journey that he went on. He came up with some pretty intense conclusions about reality as well.
Yeah. So that was like probably a couple days, maybe 1 or 2 days after we decided to, or maybe like a week after we decided to do the podcast.
Dude,
like, holy shit! Like it's a whole other thing it's McKenna. It's a unified theory of the fringe, and it's black goo. And I was like, holy shit!
Well, see, that almost lends like credence to the idea that this black goo is like some sort of consciousness and wants to get out into our consciousness. That we decided to do the episode, and it was like, here you go, look at all these things. Now put that in your show.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that fascinates me is that maybe it's not something outside our consciousness. Friend and I talk about lucid dreaming a lot, and we had a conversation about the Salem witch trials here a few days ago. And one of the concepts that's brought up at the witch trials is this idea of ethereal evidence being used in court, which is if a person shows up in one of your dreams, it's it could be them affecting you on a spiritual level, and they're cognizantly doing it through something like lucid dreaming. And we talk about these, there was this idea of dark matter being, or dark fluid being this sort of lattice work of the universe. And if that's the case, let's just pause it. Okay, that's real for now. Then you've got us sitting on top of that in, I don't know, maybe a holographic universe type scenario. And we're points of consciousness all around. We're still connected on top of this lattice work. So maybe the black goo is a representation of consciousness through something like magic or something like that. And we're all linked, right? So we have these lucid dreaming experiences, or we have things like ESP, or we're talking to each other in our sleep, or we're having the same idea at the same time. How many times have you and I sent each other the same message almost instantly?
Yeah.
About something completely off the wall that neither one of us knew the other one was thinking about, and yet we both message at the same time. It's this sort of, link. So maybe this black goo is a conduit, and stronger points, more powerful energies come through it in certain ways. Like maybe the dark energies, make it over, the darkest energies make it over into our reality through this black goo, and the other, the lighter energies come through the sun. I don't know. It's I like the idea of it not having its own consciousness, which that's also a little scarier too, because then that means someone here is in charge of, making shit that evil.
Yeah.
So what's scarier, to think that there's some sort of evil demon on the other side of the black goo trying to get through, or someone here is that evil and influencing it on life?
Yeah. That is fascinating, because then it's just a tool, right? And it's neutral. It doesn't have morality or anything connected to it. So, but then you have to hopefully hope that it gets into everyone's hands rather than a few, because no matter what, if it's good or bad, if it's only a few people have it, I would think that it would end up negative. I could be wrong. But yeah. Jeff, where are you going to go with the symbolic?
Well, it's odd that Claude would say that, because my idea of the black goo that doesn't involve, the stuff we've discussed with physical properties and all that is, to me, I think of it as a manifestation of the void. Empty. Not empty. It's not empty. We call it the void basically because we don't know what to call it.
Right. Yeah.
Something. It might as well be black goo. You know what I mean? Like in my brain, I visualize. You ever see these? I don't know, the commercials out a few years ago. I think, because I'm a car guy, right? So Cadillac was advertising some kind of special shocks that used magnetic liquid. Not the magnetic liquid. They had a magnet hovering over this liquid, and it would pull the liquid right up into the air, and it would follow the magnet around. And that's how I always kind of visualize this black goo as kind of a stand-in for the void. Basically, something that you get instant communication across it. It responds to consciousness. And like you were saying, I'm not sure it has its own consciousness, but it definitely responds to consciousness.
Right.
And that's it. That's a nutshell version of it.
I can drive with that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I like that a lot.
That's kind of where I go with it too on the symbolic level, is that it's more like this ultimate feminine energy, like the void, like you're saying, Jeff, where it's just waiting for the masculine energy of intent to help it form, because it is formless, which is sort of the programmable matter side of things, but as a symbolic thing. So then, same thing as that we've all kind of gone in this question, is that it's not really good or bad, but that your intent would be the determining factor in how it manifests. And so it would make it ever more important that we all get straight in our intention of what we would want to see in reality, if that had any truth to it. But if we're going to go then to the assuming that there is a physical black goo, what would be your kind of final take on what it might be?
I don't know that we can know, right? From my perspective, I think that the best that we could come up with right now, until we have, until I have some in a jar in front of me and I know its properties, the best I can come up with is fan fiction.
Yeah, definitely.
You
can apparently you can buy it apparently.
Yeah, was that Bella that was saying that?
Yeah. What's it called?
It's so hard for me to take him seriously.
No, I know. It's weird. He made a prediction about we're all going to be awakened, and none of this was going to matter because we're all going to ascend in a year. And the podcast was from 2015.
Way back then, yeah.
The moment somebody ends up making predictions with dates, I put them in the same line as that. What's that one church that does it every 5 years? The Pentecostal.
Oh yeah.
He's coming in 2012. No, I was wrong. I redid the math. Oh, it's 2016. Oh, I was wrong again.
I feel like it's there's these spirits who are just watch me, I'm gonna fuck with this guy, and they're hello, and you're oh shit, there's a spirit talking to me, and they're the world is gonna end in a month, and you're I have to tell everyone, and you go run screaming it, and they're
well, look, consider how much power that type of message has for something like black goo, because it's my motto to always err on the side of caution rather than fear. Because what does fear create? Fear creates the nothing. That creates the, the fear is the path.
No, that's not what creates the nothing. What creates the nothing is lies.
Lies. Well, fear is the path to the dark side anyway, right? That's
right.
and actually, Star Wars is a good example of kind of sort of what I was saying. Up until they introduced midichlorians, it's this. What did Ben Kenobi say? It moves within all of us, and it's all around us, and all this, right? And that's kind of what you were describing, right, Jeff?
Yeah. Kind of
except for, well, there's a light and dark side of the Force, and that goes to, what you were saying, Lindsay. It's this whole, maybe it can be used in either way.
Well, see, that's where I was going to go with the physical side of it, too, is like, even if there is a physical, real black goo, it's still going to be a tool, I think, and it's going to be programmable matter, and it's going to be the way you use it is more important than what it is. And mostly I'm going to go that way because I can't be very happy in a world where there's a black goo with its own consciousness that's intentionally trying to, like, destroy everything. It just makes me happier.
I mean, there still could be. I mean, they both are probably true. I mean, it is just a medium that you can act through, and so it's neutral. But then there is one that's acting evil because it's controlled by this parasitic consciousness from the cosmos.
Right.
So I'm not sure. It's really sci-fi. It's just like I feel like it's somewhere we don't have it yet. Like it's somewhere in our kind of like the back of our minds, or it's like in the zeitgeist, but like all of our prisms we're trying to like overlay it on doesn't quite fit exactly right. I mean, because even within like Harold's stuff, there's a lot of weird contradictions that I like. It's just I don't like the whole idea of like it being. I don't know. I don't resonate much with like some of the more new agey things he was talking about, and it feels like that's just his personal prism that he was trying to overlay it on. But it's just so, and like every little pop culture thing we've talked about kind of has elements that are similar to each other, but it's trying to like wrap it around like its own thing, So I think that there's something to it. It's really provocative. It's like there's something there. I don't know. It's almost like I feel like goo is a good analogy for it because it's so slippery and it's so amorphous and it can be molded to fit any theory, and it's like.
And you're absolutely right, because I was sitting here thinking about what other theories could this possibly fit into, and for whatever reason, the first one that popped in my head was adrenochrome, because we were talking about sleep, and so I was thinking, well, how would that tie in? And we go through cycles when we sleep. When we're awake, we're dealing with the light and physical reality around us, and when we go to sleep, we close our eyes. We've got phosphine dancing behind our eyelids. It's like a mini mushroom trip right before we go to sleep, and then we're off in La La Land. Maybe we're messing around in the black goo in our dreams, in our lucid dreams, and we have power. So if that sort of tap into consciousness is that powerful, then maybe that's what the elite are using from adrenochrome, by scaring people, releasing that and giving themselves a way to access that cognitively.
Like it touches on Venom. Like it makes him a superhero. Like so, the character like Eddie Brock or whatever is just he's a regular bum. Like it's kind of an element with all like the previous hosts of the symbiote. It's like you crave it after you don't have it anymore because you want that power. It turns you into Spider-Man without getting bitten by the spider. There's that. Those pictures of all the politicians and the leads getting that bruised eye. You've seen that, obviously, right? And like one of the first episodes of the Black Goo stuff is the theory that they actually like sliced it and put a little like a worm of black goo into their body, and that's like what the bruise is. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, that's a freaky idea. And it makes
not a bruise. It
makes sense to me that would be like a reason why people seem to suddenly sort of change after that experience. After you see them with the black eye, they sort of like toe the line even better or become even better actors or whatever if there's some other consciousness acting within them.
That gets into possession.
Yeah.
Star Trek actually touches on that twice that I know of. Once with the Trill, because they it's this race of people and they have this little symbiote that goes inside their stomach, and it their body dies and the symbiote gets transplanted into another, host, and that propagates. It keeps going. It keeps living in different hosts for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. The thing is each new host has all the memories of the previous host, right? And so it propagates itself that way. And then Stargate did that too with the symbiotes in the movie. I don't remember if they did it in the TV show or not, right? So Stargate, all of the Egyptian gods, they had a symbiote inside them that acted the same way.
This is a random offshoot, but Howie in the chat brought up something that reminded me. I wanted to bring up that black color that we've created. We've done 2 now. We've got like the first one, and then the second one is even more black somehow, where it's like the color itself is so black. The blackest thing out. Yeah, that you like can't even really see it. It absorbs all light, so it just looks like
that's
nothing.
The thing. That's so cool.
Yeah. I don't know if that connects or not, but I did want to bring it up, and he just reminded me. Thank you, Howie, that to bring it up, because I don't know if it connects or not, but it's at least a fascinating use of technology.
Well, that's a technology that's been used for years too. You got the whole Black Mirror thing, the scrying devices and all that.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's like its own portal.
There's that.
And I love the fact that vampires can't see themselves in mirrors. I wonder if they can see themselves in the black one.
Huh. Creepy.
Oh, wow.
What were you saying, Derek? I don't think we could catch it.
There's that story that's went around about the blob that was at that zoo with the 120 sexes.
Oh yeah.
Whatever. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Genders. Have you seen that?
Jeez.
What is that? Did they find this blob, or did they make that blob? What is it?
Dude, I just have to say that I don't think that that's real, because like the thing that makes me think it's not real is that they have such a specific number attached to its genders. And I'm like, how do you even define 270 genders or sexes? And then it goes on to say, like, there was another creature that had 36,000, and then another one had, like, 270,000 or so. I don't know. And I was just like, this is just getting more and more ridiculous, because what is sex? Sex has to do with reproduction. How many modes of reproduction are there? It's like, as far as I can tell, there's 4, right? You're male, you're female, you're both, or you're neither.
Right.
So I don't know how you get to 270 or 360,000. So that's, maybe I'm dumb. Maybe I'm really ignorant and I don't understand science. But it seems to me like it's just fake just to make it so that it's like someone can point to it and say like, see, look, science says that there's all these sexes, so I can be whatever I want. Not that you can't. You should be whatever you want, but...
What really cracks me up is doing computer programming. I know that everything ultimately will break down to a 1 or a 0 and on or off. That's that duality is what propagates energy forward. So, and if you don't have a 1 or a 0, you start adding another variable into that, then you have to split it off again, and then you have to split it off again. So the most efficient transference of energy or information is a on or off, a 1 or a 0. You put them together, and it either spawns a 1 or a 0. If you spawn a 1 and a 1, then you get a 0. A 0 and a 0, you get a 1.
All right, see, so that's like, then what they're doing then is saying like, well, look, there's another one because there's 0, 0, 1. And it's like, but that's still either a 0 or a 1. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that's how variables work at a different level. The lowest possible, it's always the lowest common denominator that determines the result.
Well, let's move into our final thoughts then about if we could combine it and sort of say like, here's how you move forward if Black Goo is negative, but also just overall kind of your final thoughts on Black Goo that you want to mention before we wrap things up.
I don't know. I think Black Goo is really fun, and I think it's important to have fun with this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that a lot of times, like, we can just get beaten down in the when we're deep in the trenches of like researching this stuff, or just like being in these communities and just seeing the constant revelations that are like that come up of what is going on in the world can get kind of daunting. Mm-hmm. So that like things like this that obviously are unbelievably sinister, but also could just be complete bullshit, and it's like such sci-fi that like it's fun to speculate and to mess around with these ideas. And I think that playfulness is like a good idea. So if Black Goo's doing anything, make it like help you think and have fun, be creative with these ideas, mold the Black Goo to make it whatever you want, symbolically. At the end of the day, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if I believe in it. I lean closest to the idea that I really like the water thing, where it's like maybe it could just be a metaphor for how water works, way. It might not exist at all, but there's just so many different things, like, and you can apparently buy it. So I don't know what to take away with it. You know what I mean? So if it's, I don't know how it's gonna hurt you, so I don't know what I recommend that somebody would take. You know what I mean? But if there is some kind of lifeblood at the center of our planet, like Sophia or whatever, that is influenced by collective consciousness of the planet and vice versa, be a good person, so that if everyone's good, so is the lifeblood of the. You know what I mean?
Oh,
maybe our good beat the other one, if that exists, if that's true. I don't know.
Yeah. I like it. I think it's perfect. What do you think, Jeff?
I think kind of like Derek was saying, there's balance in everything. So don't get overwhelmed by the idea that this black goo is so evil and so negative it's going to take over and pervade everything. You should remember, like, the most common element, at least on Earth, is carbon. And carbon is black. And it might be related. I don't know. You know, we got crude oil also, and I don't know how many thousands of products are made from crude oil. And that's a form of programmable matter in a way, because we refine it and use it in different ways, but we find it as crude oil. You know, so I think it's easy, especially in this these kinds of like fringe research, to get just caught up in ideas and just run with them and abandon all sort of your own sensibilities, you know. So I think we need to not freak out, A, and B, just kind of just remember everything's in balance. So nothing to freak out about. Nothing happens until it happens. So when that black goo meteorite finally lands and explodes and eats all matter, then we can panic.
Yes. So you're basically saying don't panic and always bring a towel.
Yeah.
Just to wipe off the
blood. What do you think, Claude?
So I discount a lot of this as mostly a sort of really fun fiction of sorts, because you have a lot of imaginations involved in coming up with these stories. And like any good fiction story, they all have elements of truth to them. That's why I think that, a little bit of truth can be found in everything.
Yeah.
That, that all around us. And, even the best lie is based on a truth. Otherwise, you can't have a lie. And to me, that's just who we are, and that's what we come up with. There might be something really awesome. In fact, there probably is something really awesome coming up from this idea of black goo that's permeated through our timeline, through our cultures, the various cultures, in the form of, some sort of programmable liquid that, we have 3D printers now. It's, a liquid or a dust that's able to become a big three-dimensional object out of, a two-dimensional isotope. And to me, that's amazing. We have, helium-3 that's, it's a smart liquid that they use for, treating cancer patients and, keeping things in a perpetual spin, in superconductors, things like that. It's not all bad, and not everything that we create is bad. And I think oftentimes, especially for, people that listen to podcasts that do deal with a lot of dark topics, a lot of times it's easier to see the darkest possible negative connotation in almost anything. And if that's the idea that we're propagating and pushing forward when we're sharing these types of ideas, then the person that hears that is going to share it in a negative light, negative connotation as well. So presenting an unbiased opinion on things, let people draw their own conclusion as to whether it's negative or positive. Maybe that's the best way to approach it, because, we all hate that one love and light person who just won't shut up about love and light. But we also know that if we think about demons all day long, that's not a good thing either.
Word. I'm going to go the route of no matter what it is, our heart chakra is connected to something powerful and good. So just like y'all are saying, like, you can go somewhere good with it, or even if it is bad in your mind or in reality, you can still be powerful in your own self and be connected to your own goodness that would be stronger than it anyways. And so no matter what it is, you can feel good about it and you can create your own reality. And so, fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, concentric, electric dose of wisdom according to my man, Jeff. Jeff, thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
And to my good friend, Derek. Derek, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you for having me. It was fun. Really fun.
And to my brother, Claude.
Sorry about the freezing and everything.
Oh, you're fine. It worked out just good.
It was fun, though. Thank you.
And to my brother, Claude. Claude, thank you for being with us tonight.
Absolutely, my pleasure. It's always fun.
Excellent. So black goo can suck my dick, especially if there's anything to the alien, demonic, outside consciousness trying to boot us out of our bodies sort of thing. It can get fucked. No matter how you parse it, I'm a sovereign being and my heart chakra knows what the fuck is up, and ain't no goo, no matter what color, gonna change that. I'm down to stick here with Sophia or Earth or whatever you want to call her, and I'll defend her to my death because she's where I came from and she's my mother. So invaders can face my wrath. And you can join me in battle or not, but never forget that the heart chakra won't lead you astray. And until next time, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Awesome. Thank you.
It's a one-on-one lesson, so do your homework. Make your dome hurt while up on earth. My bones are blessed from holy dirt. Vibes manifested to words that told me search for verbs and adjectives to describe birth. Worth more than one can speak, while the tongue beats a weak, a sour taste in your mouth, bittersweet. Words can also kill you when you sleep. Mind condition, low frequencies while the subconscious mind listens. I can tell a vision filled with lies, disguised as truth, and spread it like the word to the youth. Watch the tube. A place where the god gets food is sorcery. To recreate a god forgery does more than meets the eye. Not too many know. Just hear me flow like the eye of Horus Henio. Yeah, not ready to leave until we believe we're free to go. You hear me? Run.
From the ether, the material will eat ya. Stuck on this plane, lanes use jet fuel to greet ya. The dimensional 3 ain't meeting me on top of the 4th. Didn't climb Jacob's ladder to squab with a sword. Forged with Yggdrasil, branch down. Try quiet your lamps now. Ascension past the matter. Let they slam out they damn mouths. We ain't on land now, but they over understand. Sacrificing wisdom, hoarding dumber, kosher, wicked hands. Putting faith in worthless worship of the mortals. Artificial portals, mass ingestion of the black goo. Bioengineered morsels, conversing with machine elves. Bypassing maggots, they stuck on Android screens now. I'm scrolling emerald tablets. Moloch living lavish, off the backs of the savage. Them clasp hands at the Sabbath. Smack of energy damage, they done twisted the tongues. But nanotech in the lungs, the awakening's begun. All they really can do is fucking run.